Good afternoon. The February 21st, 2023 board work session is now in order. Paul, please call roll.
Mr. Susan?
Here.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Ms. Campbell?
Here.
Ms. Jenkins?
Here.
Mr. Trent?
Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We now begin with a public hearing on Board Policy 0169.1, participation at board meetings. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Dr. Miller, you don't want to get up here and address the item? No? All right. Listen to the speakers. Is there anybody here? No? All right. Mr. Paul Gibbs, do you need to address the board on any issue here?
I don't have anything. I just want to point out that I did make the changes requested at the last meeting, including the public comment period is extended until the start of public comment, so they can sign up to speak up until we start public comment.
And you said that is inside there, but
Yeah,
it's not.
I highlighted it in here that that's the only change since
Okay.
the last board meeting.
All right. Any other board members wish to discuss any other items besides that?
I do. It's been brought to my attention by a few of our voters that they really wish that we would duplicate the county commission's process for public comments in the manner that we would allow them to speak to more than one topic, which would extend their time. And so I know, obviously, we don't want to start policy making over again or hinder what we're doing currently. I just want it to be, I want to bring it up to you guys and ask if that's something that this board wishes to move forward with so that somebody's able to speak on more than one item. And it may not be the wish of the entire board. I promised that I would bring it up and we would discuss it.
So just so everybody clarifies, the county, for each one of the items, it gives an opportunity for
Right.
public speakers to come up and speak about it. And there's two sides to that. One, usually at the county, you have different people come to speak to those items. One of the things that I would say on the other side of the argument is that some people may just come and speak to every item. But, you know, even if they do, it's their right as an individual. So I'll just kind of explain that. If anybody hasn't been over the county, I can go into it in more depth, but that's kind of where you were going. So any other conversation?
I hear what you're saying. In practice, we've very rarely had we've had people come up and use their 3 minutes and actually get through quite a few things. And in addition, even though we do only have that one time specified, when we do, like at our next meeting, evening meeting, in the first one in March, when these policies come on, they will have regular public comment time, and they can also comment on these. Anything that comes from a public hearing, our boundary changes, those things all get a separate public comment time.
Yeah.
And so I'm just, like I said, in reality, even sometimes we've had people talk about, oh, I'm not getting enough time, and they ended up with like 45 seconds left even. So it's just, I don't know. I at this time, I'm not interested in completely rearranging what we've done. I think we've got a good something working with these changes.
Ms. Jenkins?
Yeah, I don't actually believe that that's a majority request or concern out of the general public. I think it's a specific handful of people, and I will argue that the last revision of the public comment policy, once the crowds died down, technically people got more time to speak than ever before because they were able to speak on non-agenda items as well as agenda items. And they spent at least half of their 6 minutes that they were allotted complaining about how they wanted more time. I don't remember any instance where someone had 6 minutes to speak and ran out of time to talk about something they wanted to talk about. So I don't think it's an actual concern right now for the community. We also have in there, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have it open, sorry, where we can vote to extend it, correct? Thank you. So anytime we feel like there's a hot topic or a bunch of hot topics on the agenda before public comment happens, we can vote to extend that public comment time and period for people to have a longer time to speak. So I think that provision in there is enough for us to tackle that challenge.
Ms. Jenkins, just for point of clarification, are you saying that we would actually possibly vote to extend past the 3 minutes, or can you explain that a little bit more?
Good.
Yeah, I know, but I want her to clarify.
Not sure why I need to clarify for you, Mr. Susan, because this was something that existed prior to the last policy. So yes, you can vote to
Right.
extend the 3 minutes at any point.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that we were starting at 3 minutes, that's all. I'm sorry, Mr. Trent, did you wish to speak on this item?
It's going to be much of the same. Yeah, I do think we need to look at what other boards are doing, and if we can, speak on agenda items and non-agenda items and give our public, 6 minutes to speak in a meeting, that is quite a bit. But if we have the flexibility when we do have the hot topics to extend that, I think that's always good. But I do think it's a good idea for us to continue to have this conversation, especially today, yes.
Ms. Wright, if you can explain, so under your proposal, I know much like the county, but if I can say it again, there would be one time where everybody gets to speak, and then we would go each policy or whatever
Well,
item, like,
Typically,
walk
when
me
you
through
go
that.
to even like a city council meeting, you're able to fill a comment card out to each specific item. So it gives you more time to be able to speak if there's multiple things that you want to speak on. I understand the ramifications of what this looks like for the board. I realize that in reality. But I also think that it is important for us to hear our public. So that is the only reason that I'm bringing it forward, is because despite what other board members are stating, it was brought to my attention that this is a desire of the public. And I, as somebody who's elected, said I will bring it forward and discuss it with our board and see what their thoughts are on moving this. So I don't, and again, don't want to hinder what we're currently doing. So I am in no way suggesting that we stop this policy and go to rewriting the policy. I just want it to be something that we discuss, because it may come up at a future time, that we look at moving towards duplicating what some of our other forms of government are doing for public comment.
Can I make
Yes,
a
ma'am.
suggestion? Because I did some of this when we were revising this and over the last couple of years, I'm going to make a suggestion that we each spend some time watching some of the other school board meetings around the state, especially ones our size, because it's not fair to compare us to like some of the little teeny tinies that may only have 2 or 3, they only have 2,000 people in their county or something like that. So, but to see how they structure it, to get some ideas, we certainly have the flexibility to do it however we want. But I think that would be a great place to start, because school districts are a different animal. I've seen some that they have, they put all the consent agenda items together. So you can't, if you're going to do something in the consent, you still only get 3 minutes to speak to anything under consent.
Right.
But then you might get another 3 minutes to something that's under the action agenda, and then they do a general one anyway also. So there's some different ways to do it, but I think it would be good to get an idea. I mean, we obviously have this, but even among the city and the county and the municipalities in Brevard, everybody does a little different, and and they're also different sizes and different size complaints. So I think it would be good for research purposes. Go on YouTube, fast forward to the public comment part, or play it on 2 times speed. It's always fun. And just pick up some ideas from there, too. And, of course, our FSBA membership is a great resource, too. Just ask some of your school board member friends from across the state, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? If you could redo it. Because, honestly, we're not the only district that has redone this over the last couple of years. A lot of school districts and school boards are discovering, hey, maybe we do this a better way. Maybe there's a different way. All within legal bounds, but just whatever meets the needs of our district.
Any other discussion on it?
Yeah, so as someone who has been sitting here for 2 years having this conversation over and over and over again, I feel like we continuously are solving problems that don't exist. And it's baffling to me how many times over the past 3 months we've heard, well, the county commission does this and that. We are not the county commission. We are equally elected officials who can make our own decisions. We don't have to reflect what they're doing across the street. Just because they're doing it doesn't mean it's right. Again, never said that these complaints weren't brought to you, but I don't believe that they're a majority. And I also don't believe that it's an actual issue that we've even had present in this boardroom. So I think it's something to pay attention to. And if it is a problem and becomes a problem now that we revised it back to the one time speaking for 3 minutes, then it's something to address. But to just imagine that it's going to become a problem, I think is a waste of time for us to start this process over.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. I like it. My only question would be kind of where Campbell was at is, if we pull up for consent, do we do each item? Do we do action items? You know what I mean? So Paul, one of the things I was looking at is, you know, when we go to the adoption of the agenda, do we allow public speaking there? No. But what would legally put us in a good place where we could give people the right to talk at each one of them? And if you could do like a legal review of what we legally could allow on each topic for them to speak to, and then bring that back at the next meeting, then we might be able to take a look at it. And to be honest with everybody up here, I mean, I would rather stall it 2 weeks, get it done right, rather than go back and come back and do it later on. You know what I
It
mean?
wouldn't be stalled 2 weeks. We'd have to restart the ad
Yeah.
process, so it's going to be a longer period of time.
Right. Again, I'm not suggesting that we stop the process that we're currently doing. I think we should do this because that way we don't have to
Okay.
every board meeting go, can we make the motion to extend the speaking time? And, you know, so let's move this forward, and then this is a conversation that's going, I believe, to come up again, so I would just want it to be on everyone's radar. It was literally just to kind of get it out there and say, hey, this is something that we should consider doing, just to give everyone the ability to speak as much as possible to the items that are there. One of the things, I spoke to Mr. Gibbs about this, and I would like you to research this, but a lot of other school districts do not televise public comment period. And I think that there is a benefit to that, to a lot of districts. They have seen a benefit to that. So I would like Mr. Gibbs to research that if possible, just to look at the legality of how they do that.
Love it.
And benefits and the downside to that as well.
You want me to take this one?
Sounds
I
good.
gotta jump on this
Are we,
one.
are we
Oh,
good
I
on,
know, I'm gonna get
Hang
arrows.
on, hang
No,
on.
we're not done. We're not done. So this was a conversation we had last time. I fought that tooth and nail. Because quite frankly, there's this narrative in this conversation. You guys said it in your campaign of a lack of transparency. So absolutely not. We have a perception in this public that we're not being transparent. Again, it's one that you guys ran in your campaign. I do not believe in shutting off the camera when people are making public comment. Leave it on. If you've got nothing to hide, leave it on. And quite frankly, I've said it time and time again, anytime we're meeting, I personally think it should be recorded and filmed as well. I don't know why it's only happening in this boardroom. All we have to do is pop open a cell phone. I've argued that for the past 2 years as well. No way, absolutely not.
Just because it's recent history.
Campbell?
Yeah, we got crucified for doing that very thing. From the right and from the left, we heard from consistent messaging, don't turn the cameras off because I want to see everybody and I'm watching from home. So I will just, I mean, that was, and what we ended up doing was we passed the policy and then we had to vote. What you're talking about we don't want to do, we had to vote until we could fix it back. We had to vote for the next 3 meetings to leave the cameras on during the non-agenda items that we had at the end. And so, I mean, we can do whatever we want to, but I'm just telling you ahead of time, we already made that mistake in this county and it didn't go over very well.
I think I'm sorry, anybody else have any other comments? I think part of it is that there's multiple ways to do it. Like, I know Orange County has it before the meeting starts, and there's other things. So I think we can all do, as Ms. Campbell said, let's go look at some options and stuff like that. Let's keep our minds open based upon what you see. And then, Paul, if you can bring back some sort of legality on it, that'd be great. Any other further discussion on this item? Good, hearing none. We shall now begin with public hearing on Board Policy 9800, Charter Schools. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this item? No? Okay. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this item? No? Do any board member, wait, Ms. Klein, do you wish to address the board on this topic, or are you okay? All right. Do any board members wish to discuss this topic?
Just very briefly.
Yep, go. Yes, Ms. Campbell?
I just had a community member provide some feedback. I just wanted to clarify, the changes that we're making to this policy, from the short policy that it was to the very long policy it is now, those are all based in statute, correct?
Yeah, well, previously, our one-pager was something the district had created as
Right.
their charter school. We are moving to Neola's template. Neola's template is 25 pages long, so,
Right.
yeah, and that's
But-
why it grew by 24 pages.
But the template is literally
statute.
word for word, pretty much straight out of statute. So there's not a lot of, we can create our own version in here.
Right, we're bound to follow the statute anyways. It's
Right.
just now being put in our policy
So even
that way.
before we had the policy changes, we were doing what the statute said, we
Yes.
just didn't have it written in there.
Yes.
Okay, just thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. And in reviewing a lot of these policies, that seems to be consistent with what we have. Anybody else wish to discuss this item? No? Hearing none, let's move on. We will now begin with the public hearing on Board Policy 3120.11, Preference for Veterans in Employment. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Anyone present who wishes to address this item? Ms. Carol Green, do you have want to say anything on this item? Okay, thank you. Does any board members wish to discuss this item? You guys should all be proud of this item because this is a big deal, and it's something that I think we should push out, our commitment to veterans. All right, with no discussion, we can move on to the next one. We will now begin with public hearing on Board Policy 5121, Controlled Open Enrollment. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Okay. Ms. Klein, do you wish to address the board? But I see Ms. Green coming up. What am I? It says Klein. You're just turning down. Do you wish to address this item in any way? No? All right. Do any board members wish to address this policy? Hearing none, I just wanted to ask the question. Last time we were here, there was some wraparound adding our employees to Tier 1, not Tier 2. Now, I will be honest with you, after reading the policy, I think they are Tier 1, but it's just a weird wording. Like, it seems that if an employee has their child with them, that they can transfer into that school if they're hired. And the only issue was, just so I can do this, if I am a teacher who has my child with me at one school, and then I go teach at another school because I transfer, because that's something that we have, as a board are committing to, would they be able to drag their kid with them to go there? That's all.
So we would make those accommodations. But Tier 1, the reason we have to separate that is
Sure.
those are the statutory guidelines within 5121.
Yeah, and we could always, just for proof of law, put the faculty right on, as long as they don't go above those, we're adding to it, we can put them on Tier 1.
That's
But I'm
correct.
okay, as long as you're telling me that every time an employee has a situation, we're going to take care of them, that's all that matters.
We do.
And then we'll just tell the rest of the employees that are concerned that they're Tier 2, listen, it
Just call
doesn't
me.
matter. Just
Just
call
call
Ms.
me.
Klein.
Just
It's
call me.
okay, people.
Just call me.
All right, good. We're good
11411.
there. All right, I'm okay. Does anybody else wish to discuss this item?
I would just say, you know, I don't think,
Oh.
I can't think we would have a staff member who would literally be frustrated because we're putting foster kids and custody, kids cut in custody issues or military personnel over their own families. So I think they understand.
Yeah, I mean, but there's other things that occur, but according to Ms. Klein, we work it out and we're good. So, all right. Moving on, we will now begin with a public hearing on Board Policy 7440.03, use of small unmanned aircraft systems in school settings. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Anyone present who wishes to address this item? Ms. Green, do you wish to address this item? Do any board members wish to address this policy? Hearing none, Paul, you look like you're ready to go there, no? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to move on. Next up, we will now begin with public hearing on Board Policy 9130, public complaints. Is there anyone here who wishes to address this item? Anyone here who wishes to address this item? It's public complaints. It's not what you think it is. Mr. Paul Gibbs, do you wish to address the board if needed?
No, I just wanted to point out, I did add with the part that was cut off that Ms. Campbell pointed out last time, so should be good to go.
Mr. Gibbs, you seem like Johnny on the spot today. This is a good job. Here we go.
Thank you.
Next up, do any board members wish to discuss this policy? No? All right. That concludes our public hearing items. Next topic is superintendent search discussion and direction. Ms. Andrea Messina with the Florida School Board Association will lead the conversation. You have the floor, Ms. Messina.
May I take the chair, or do you want me
You can, whatever you feel comfortable with.
to have some spreading out?
Yeah, no problem. Like, kick the other ones out and everything else, and make sure that the microphone works for you and all the good stuff.
Appears that it works. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, hello, board members. It is a pleasure to be back with you here today as we continue to move through the process of community input and developing the advertisement, which we're hoping is going to be able to go out on Friday to begin your superintendent search activities. I do want to point out, attached to your agenda, you should have a number of items. First, I want to point out the community forums and focus group summaries, which were provided along the way as those particular summaries were conducted. You should have also a copy of the student forum that was conducted, and I actually have all of the student input sessions. Very interesting. I don't know if you spent any time reading all of that, but we have all of those focus group summaries. Then you should have received a link so that you could interact with the community survey results, and you had just under 5,000 responses from your community. What I have done with those community responses, we had 5 questions that asked
Hang on, I'm
peop-
sorry, somebody didn't have their cell phone turned off at the meeting, I apologize. We're good. Go
Okay.
ahead, Mr. Sanders.
So respondents to the survey were asked, as you recall, to prioritize from among 10 items. And one thing I want to remind you is that each respondent, so almost 5,000 of them, for every question, the items were randomized. So those 10 items weren't in the same order for every person who took the survey, which gives the survey a little bit more credibility because the items that floated to the top were legitimately ones that people identified no matter where they appeared on the list. So I went through each of the 5 items and prioritized them 1 through 5. You'll notice that in the area of academic excellence, the item that came in with 40%, the top ranking item, is commitment to all children and willing to visit classrooms and participate in school activities. So people want somebody who's visible, okay? In the area of exceptional workforce, the number 1 item with 63.9% of people identifying it has experience motivating staff and students, improving morale, and generating enthusiasm. So you're looking for a dynamic and motivating leader. For the area of community connection, the number 1 item with 58.6% collaborates with faculty and community members, responds to diverse community interests and needs, and mobilizes community resources. So once again, speaking to the motivating factor and the collaborating desire. For operational sustainability, the number 1 item with 42.6% of respondents identifying it is responsible for all aspects of student and staff safety and security, no surprise, including oversight of district security, so safety and security priority. And then for the area of personal leadership qualities, the number 1 item with 49.9% of respondents identifying builds trust and respect and serves as a role model for staff, students, and community. So really interesting information. I should point out that we asked all respondents to identify the categories that they felt represented them. People could identify more than one. So we had 66.2% who identified as a parent or guardian. We had 61.4% who identified as a community member, 41.4% public school employee, current or former, and then 11.9% business leader, 7.9% student, and 13.7% other. So quite a number of parents, 66.2%, which I think is really worthy of recognition. I also want to point out that there are, let's see, 65, almost 40 pages at the very end of the survey of additional information people wanted to share. So people were asked to identify what are the top 2 or 3 strengths, and you have hundreds of pages of that. When I went through, what I heard was people really believed that your diversity, your teachers, your community, the opportunities and programs you provide, people really like the location, the Space Coast, they like Cape Canaveral being here. Students, kids, however they identified that, technology, the support staff, they like the fact that there's innovation, technology, high performance and expectations, integrity, and resiliency. And I thought that was a really valuable insight from members of your community on the strengths that they saw. I will say then, followed by that, they wanted to identify the challenges that the next superintendent was going to be facing. And no surprise, staff retention and pay, behavior and student discipline, morale, cohesion, both of the community and the board, politics, poverty, academic integrity, and technology. So those were the things that were identified in the strengths and the challenges. And then you had the area that had just some additional stuff, which ran the gamut of what people said. One person put their name and address, and it wasn't even from this state. It seems like they were in South Dakota or something.
My husband filled me in on that. That is a Breaking Bad character.
Say that again?
I asked my husband about that when I was reading through it last night, and he said, read that again, and he said, that's a character off of Breaking Bad. So, little humor thrown in
Interesting.
to the mix.
So I thought you got some really valuable information, and what our goal is in gathering this information is to provide you with some perspective from the community, from all facets of the community, that can help guide you as you're going through this process. It can guide you as you're reviewing resumes. It can guide you as you're interviewing finalist candidates. And what we tried to do, and this is where I'm going to pivot to the qualifications, what we tried to do, qualities, in the qualities sheet that you have, and you should have 16 qualities listed there, is we tried to really summarize to the best of our ability everything that we saw in all of the feedback, both in person and online, in these 16 qualities. Now, what these qualities, we want to walk through them and discuss them and see if you want to change them, if you think we've left anything out. But one of the reasons we provide these qualities, we post it on your search portal. So when people are, when we advertise, we say, go visit the portal, you'll get more information. These are the things that they're going to read, are the things that we are looking for. These are the things we're going to focus on when people talk to us and ask questions about your district. These are the kinds of qualities, based on what we read, we believe this community has said they're looking for. So I want to walk through them and see if you want to make any changes or edits to them. I started, and they're numbered 1 through 16. You guys have access to this, correct? Yeah, okay.
Would you like us to go each one and give you our feedback, or do you want to run through them all, and then if we have changes? What's easier for you?
I just want to give a brief overview,
Yep.
and then if people have specific input, we can take that.
Yep.
I tried to put them in rank order, at least at the beginning: safety, security 1, academics 2. Some of the other things fell into place down the line from there, but I wanted to be clear that safety and security and student academics were at the beginning. So you'll notice some key phrases that we pulled from the community survey top ranking items, things like collaborates, community, builds trust, things like that. All of that is kind of baked into these statements. Number 1 focuses on safety and security. Number 2 focuses on student performance by identifying all achievement gaps and setting some goals, measurable strategies. Number 3 demonstrates commitment to all children and shows support. This is the one that includes visiting schools and celebrating success. Number 4 references collaborating with the school board, and it focuses on strategic plan, school board policies, and accountability measures. Number 5 is really the one that we tried to pull together to focus on innovation and trends in education as leadership. Number 6 is building trust and respect by leading with integrity, optimism, humility, and vision, because we saw several comments about that. Number 7 is building open, honest relationship and building consensus, resolving challenging issues. We heard that in some of our face-to-face sessions. Number 8 is familiarity with district culture and engaging with the diverse communities. Number 9 is accessible, approachable, visible in schools. 10 speaks to the motivation of students and staff, but maintains high expectations. 11 speaks to school finance, budgeting, business operations. 12 speaks to implementing a behavioral plan, setting standards for students and staff with consequences, but understanding the importance of listening to parents, principals, and teachers in this kind of a plan. 13 speaks to legislators, community, business, civic partner engagement. 14 is relationships with high-tech companies in the Space Center. 15 is building a volunteer program, and 16 is being decisive and able to build consensus. So if there are any suggestions for either changes or if we've left anything out, happy to hear them now.
Any board members wish to address the qualities? Ms. Campbell?
Just one. These are great, and considering how much input you had, I very much appreciate that you guys were able to consolidate them out into the 16. On number 8, is familiar with Brevard County School District culture and traditions, or is willing to fully engage with the school district. See, reading is fundamental. Because I was thinking, okay, if somebody coming in from the outside, I don't assume that, but I want them to get there really fast. So is willing to fully engage with school district and diverse communities. So thank you. Question answered. I'm good.
Thank you, Board Member Campbell. Consider it done.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Do you want us to reduce it down to 10? Did you want us to keep it at 16? What would you like from us?
If you're comfortable with all of them, I mean, you guys have a large district and you have a lot of needs.
Yep.
And I think it really will help people understand, if I'm going to apply, these are some of the, these are the expectations. And if I'm short in one area or another, that doesn't exclude me, but I'm going to need to know that I'm going to have a plan to overcome that area of shortcoming.
Yep.
Yeah, good.
What I would ask, if everybody else is finished, is where it says builds and enhance relationships with high-tech companies, Kennedy Space Center, and the military, it's number 14 on the list. If we can put in there, builds and enhances a pipeline of CTE to and enhances, you know what I mean? Basically, our trades pipeline to all of these. That way they can see our commitment to trades, which is one of our top 3 arguable components of our school district. You can wordsmith it to however you want it, but you get my point. And that's the only one that I wish to kind of upgrade, if everybody's okay with that.
Chairman, are you specifically looking for the word trade, or is career technical?
We call them CTE programs, right? Career and Technical Educational Programs. Trades programs is what everybody knows them as. So if you want to put in there, however you want to word that, is just basically not only to create the relationship, but the pipeline to those companies from our students. That's pretty much it.
And are you looking for a pipeline to enter the program, or a pipeline to exit the program into employment?
No, to come out of our schools and enter into all of the trades inside the local area. We are the 8th largest manufacturing base in the United States, and just that is a commitment. Not many people know that we have 580 manufacturers in our county.
Okay, so here's what I have. You tell me if this fits your needs. I'm going to add some language to the end of this one. Builds and enhances a relationship with high-tech companies, Kennedy Space Center, the military, and other related entities, and develops a pipeline for placement upon successful completion of programs.
You're amazing. Thank you.
That's really good. Yeah.
I mean, she took the words out of my mouth.
Right out of your mouth.
I mean, I was sitting here like, man, that's exactly what I was thinking. All right. Everybody else good?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I think the next one, what is the next topic you need from us?
The next one is the qualifications, and this is important because when we post the advertisement, we put the required qualifications, the preferred qualifications, and that's going to determine whether somebody applies or not based on meeting those qualifications. The document you have in front of you shows you that currently, based on your job description, you require an earned doctorate preferred, which was kind of odd language, but that's what's there. MBA or equivalent is required, but earned doctorate is preferred, and a minimum of 10 years successful managerial administrative experience and a Florida driver's license. So MBA or equivalent, 10 years successful managerial administrative experience, and driver's license. That's what you guys have currently. What we're suggesting you consider is a master's degree from an accredited college or university. We like to use the word accredited. 10 years of successful managerial administrative experience, which is what you already have. The Florida driver's license, which is what you already have. Under preferred, based on the input that we saw, doctorate degree from an accredited college or university, classroom, school-based, or district-level education experience. So having it under preferred but not required means that other people could apply, but what we heard from a lot of the input was people really are looking for an educator, somebody that has some experience, but we didn't want to have it required, so we are suggesting you put it under preferred. And then the third preferred, which you don't have any reference to, is experience in a school district with more than, and we have at least 20,000 students, but given your size, it could be more. It's just, remember, nationally, school districts are much smaller than they are in Florida. So by saying 20,000, we thought that that would at least, people will have had experience with systems and processes to a degree that can be scaled up to the size of your district. So I'd like to hear any input or conversation on these suggested recommendations, please.
Any board members?
Yeah,
Ms. Campbell?
I like this. Thank you for making these changes, because when I see MBA, Masters of Business Administration, that's not even what.
There was a reason for that.
Right. So I think this makes sense to make those changes, and then we'll need to update our, and approve a revised job description, with these changes. So I am a fan of all of the considerations.
Anybody else?
The required makes sense. The preferred, even though that's not required, so we're not bound by anything there. The experience in school districts of more than 20,000 students, I personally just think that limits, and it might, even though it's not required, it wouldn't scare me off if I was in a district that had 15,000 students. But I would feel better if that was not there, or a lower number, like 15,000
Okay.
students, personally.
I think, thanks for bringing that piece up. Does anybody else wish to discuss lowering it past 15,000, or, have a problem with dropping it down to 15,000?
I would, especially since we're only leaving it under preferred, I'd like to keep it right where it is, because we are, a large district, the 11th largest or 10th, I can't remember what the last count is, in the state of Florida. And, there is a lot that falls under that kind of leadership and the systems that we have in place that other districts just don't have that kind of scale. Just very simply, I think we deserve somebody who has that kind of experience and need.
Anybody else wish to discuss that?
I have a
Ms.
question,
Jenkins?
just.
Oh,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead and ask the question, then
I
I'll get
just
to
had a
Ms.
question
Jenkins.
for Ms. Messina. When applicants come in and apply for this, are you going to rank them based on how they rank up on the required plus preferred? So those ones will obviously elevate to the top, or how does that work?
Okay, first off, we don't rank any of them, ever.
Okay.
But what we would do is we would, when we bring the applicant pool to you, and the first time we bring it to you, you'll have it before we physically come and review it with you. But we will walk through, here's the packet, or let's not call it a packet, but here are the applicants
Okay.
that we believe meet your qualifications, okay?
Okay.
So let's say we have a strong qualification that comes from a district with 15,000, okay? We would say, here is a superintendent, this person has been named Superintendent of the Year in Idaho, pick a state, all these awards, whatever, but came from a district with 15,000. So board, would you like us to keep that person in or funnel that person out? We don't funnel any, we bring them all to you, but we would acknowledge to you they don't meet the 20,000 limit. However, we think you ought to at least look at it and have some conversation related to it.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
So they're not filtering anything for us
Right.
necessarily.
I personally, I don't have an issue with the size or the number of students. What I think is really important is Florida's very unique
Right.
as a school district. So, as the state goes, as our statutes and rules and all of that. I would love to see experience in Florida. I know that could possibly lower the applicants because of the fact that we are going to be looking nationwide. But I think it's very important that someone that has history with Florida, because again, if you come from a different state and you're not familiar with all the rules and the sunshine and the different things, that's a hard landing, so to speak, on getting your feet wet in a district that has a lot of things that you're not familiar with. But that's my personal opinion.
Can I ask for a clarification?
It was somebody that has experience working within Florida school districts.
So if they were a teacher in Florida but then became an administrator in another state, would you consider that?
I would. They would be familiar with Florida's rules.
Okay.
I think it's just different around the country. I think one of the biggest struggles that we have is sunshine. That's a that it is a challenge for a lot of people to understand how that works for superintendent role on who you can talk to and things of that nature. So I would like someone with experience there.
Can I go back to the size?
Yeah.
So, I don't think we should manipulate the size at all, because again, we're 49th in the nation, not just 10th in Florida. We're large, we're really, really large, and typically with that, every state's gonna be different based on how they structure their education system, comes a giant budget to manage. So lowering the number of students most likely is going to lower the amount of staff that they're used to working with, as well as the budgets that they're in charge of, so I think it's good where it is. If somebody is near that number or even significantly below, if they think they're qualified, they're going to apply anyway, right? They're going to put their foot in the door. And if the rest of their application is justifying them being the right candidate, that is not going to deter us from taking a look at them. I'm going to be a hard counter and a no to the preferred from being from Florida. We already had made a decision to do a nationwide search. And by putting that on there, I think we're reverting back to not being a nationwide search. And giving this preference to someone who is already within the state. I argue that education law is continuously changing, if not by week, sometimes by day. And so if somebody's qualified enough to lead the 10th largest district in the state of Florida, I think they're going to be qualified enough to keep up to date with what's going on here in Florida and get up to speed. I think by doing that, we're going to limit our applicant pool.
I agree with I don't want to limit our applicant pool to the state of Florida. And I know we wouldn't be, right?
Right.
But I don't even want to put it on there because I don't want
Okay.
people to think, oh, well, probably not going to take me seriously. We don't know what's out there. And the truth is, we have had this conversation before. We are, maybe not literally, but we are in competition with several districts in our own state. And if we're, I know there's always, a jostling around just like we have with principals in our schools, people moving around. I think we need to leave that wide open. And we can't, there's nothing to say that when we get into the interview process that we can't personally consider. If you want somebody in Florida and we've got a slew of candidates and one of them's from Florida and the other four are not, you personally can have that. But I wouldn't want to put it on the application and be limiting in any way because we may just have a rock star out there that wants to come here. And if they're smart enough to be and qualified, and I think that Ms. Jenkins was getting it at the same point, to do this, they'll catch on real quick. I have faith that they can catch on real quick if it's the person that we choose. There's going to be a lot of new to get used to, even if they have experience, even if they're coming from a school district that has 100,000 kids in another state. There's going to be a lot of new to get used to, but obviously we would want someone who is capable of handling all that change.
I also, just to double down on that too, there's no guarantee with this, but I feel like it's a safe assumption. If somebody's considering to make a move across the country to come here, they're probably going to stay here for a little while. Not to say if they're coming from Florida, they're not committed in staying here a long time, but that's just something to think about as well too. Because we had experience here in Brevard where we had people internally from the state of Florida who only stayed for a year or two and then dipped out for a higher paying job somewhere else. So it's not always the worst thing to just look outside.
Mr. Trent.
Yeah, just to continue on the number of students, is it because it is a nationwide search, and one of the reasons we're 49th in the country is because not all states have county districts. From having experience in school districts outside of the state of Florida, many have smaller municipalities. Most, right. Some of the most effective and efficient superintendents that I've dealt with literally had one school, one large school, but I don't want to see limiting our pool. It's a big competition here, and throughout the country, if they have 5,000 students in a school district, which might just mean a couple high schools, it doesn't mean they could not be up for the task here. So, if they see that he or she sees that, it just could be a hindrance. I just want to make sure that we realize it is a nationwide search, and they don't need to be from Florida, and they certainly do not need to have, 20,000 students under their
Do you
guidance.
have a figure, or do you just want to remove it completely?
Well, again, I think for the right candidate, you're going to apply no matter what. So us putting anything there, it doesn't seem like, I'll have the majority of the board for that, but putting any figure, we want the right person. So I agree with what Ms. Jenkins says, they don't have to be from Florida. And, you know, I agree with Ms. Wright that it doesn't have to be 20,000 students. That's right. I think if you're the right person for the job, you're going to apply. For us to put that in there as preferred, it doesn't serve any purpose. It's not going to weigh in on my decision
Okay.
on to have them, so I don't want it to be out there for the person attempting to apply.
So does the rest of the board want me to leave 20,000 as the figure?
Yeah, I wanted to talk at the end. Like I always wait for
Yeah,
them
he
to
didn't
do all the
talk yet.
discussion and then
Go
I
ahead.
wait if I can talk. Is everybody else good?
We're done.
You know, one of the things about the 20,000 is that we in Florida say 20,000. If you look at where the break point of that is that you talk about a limiting factor. Because Florida is so unique, there's many other school districts that are very small. And so where you also may want to try to look is that we don't fund our schools the same way many of the other schools do throughout the state. So you may have a school district that's at 8,000 that has a massive budget, where in Florida we would have 10,000 and more staff and more resources and everything else. I mean, you go to some of these other school districts in Michigan, you go in Kentucky, you go to other places, and they have literally turfed their fields. Their facilities are all brand new. So it's difficult to put down that there's a 20,000, and I agree with you that you literally are saying preferred, that these are the only people that we want to see. I'm okay with lowering it to 15,000. I'm okay, and I know that everybody who's going to be a potential candidate for us would eventually watch this. So I think that, like you had said, if we don't want to lower it, at least everybody knows that it's not an actual requirement and they'll come. You know what I mean? So I'm okay to move it down, but I think, Ms. Campbell, were you okay to move it down, or did you want to keep it
No,
up?
I'd like to keep it where it is, under preferred. And
Okay.
it's not required. It's, I mean, they can read.
Miss-
If they can't, then we're in trouble.
Ms. Jenkins, you're not in favor of it?
No,
Ms.
and I'm going to reiterate, I get that Florida is structured differently. I understand that, but this is almost 1/4 of the size of our district. This isn't even anywhere near the size of our district. And quite frankly, yes, you absolutely could be coming from a district that only has 8,000 and may be qualified to serve this district, but you will be a rare, unique individual, and we'll notice that. Because this is a very unique size district. It's very, very large. Our budget is tremendous. You have to be the right candidate to be able to fulfill that. And odds are, if you don't have the experience with something with a significant size, it's going to be really difficult to transition to a district this large. Again, it's not the size of our district. It's 1/4 of the size of our district. So remember that.
So, thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
I'm okay with lowering the number as well, so.
Did you want to lower it to 15, or did you want to lower it to 10, or did you want to get rid
I
of it?
don't think that it even necessarily needs to be there, so I'm comfortable with taking it off of there, but that's, again,
Mr. Trent, where's your guidance? Seems like there's a majority to move it. Where do you want to go?
Lower would be
That won't
best.
bother anymore.
You know, if we can gain support in that, removal of it altogether would be, let them, I know they can read, but let them apply, and then we can also read, and we'll look at their resume. It's the character of the person that we're hiring, not the size of the team that they led, but their leadership skills and their experience in whatever team they led is why they're going to be sitting here.
Character
hang on,
and
hang on.
capability. And I
Yeah.
think the numbers speak to the capability.
Well, I think, if I can speak, because I have pretty good relationships with a lot of superintendents across the state of Florida. There's one in particular that I wanted to talk about, which is a good example. So the superintendent from Suwannee County, okay, elected superintendent, is amazing. And he is known as he's a very strong leader in the Panhandle among the NEFAC and a couple of the other organizations. And Suwannee County is only 6,000 students. And so I would put him up against many of the superintendents that are out there. And I know for a fact he's not going to apply for ours. That's why I was going to use him as an example. But the issue is that there are people out there that may be what we're looking for. They may be so dynamic. And I just, regardless of if we lower it or not, I would just want people to understand that just because you're in a larger school district doesn't mean that you're better than the guy that's in the smaller one. You know what I mean? And so I'm okay with lowering it down. If you guys want to put a number there, if you want to do something, that's fine. But I think we've pretty much set the tone that, and everybody up here, I think even you, Ms. Campbell, agreed, and Ms. Jenkins, that it's not a requirement. So you can come in, but I think it did show some indication over where our minds are when we look at the applications for the future. So with that, Mr. Trent, where would you like this thing to go?
I'd like to have it removed.
I'm in favor of removing it as well.
All right, so we can remove it. The reason that I was wanting to remove it or lower it was because I truly believe that at the salaries that some of the school district superintendents are getting to, that we may be able to attract somebody from the outside that is not only, may not even be a part of a school district, you know what I mean? And they may have some opportunities there, and that's part of the later discussion. But as far as that goes, and then I think that we had the nix on the experience in Florida. The issue that I wanted to bring up, if I may, and I apologize, does anybody else have any other issues that they wanted to bring up in here?
Yeah, I hear the majority of the board, but I'm going to say it again for public record's sake. We are the 10th largest school district in the state of Florida. We are the 49th largest in the United States. If you can't come to a consensus that you believe that the capability and your overall ability to manage a large district, only nearly a quarter of the size of us, is important, I am concerned about our ability to even filter these candidates. That literally blows my mind. Blows my mind. We have over $1 billion in our budget. 70,000 students, 9,000 employees. We are tremendous. It doesn't mean you can't apply. Do we need to define preferred versus required? I'm just so confused. This is the most important thing we are putting on paper to start this process. And if we can't agree that experience matters, what are we going to be doing over the next 2 months? It doesn't make any sense to me. I wanted that on public record.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Anybody else wish to talk about any other issues? I had one that I wanted to bring up that, Dr. Schiller, did you wish to speak?
I know I'm not part of the search process, but I'd like to just raise a couple of observations. One, you have an MBA as a possibility, but you don't speak to a JD in the event that someone does not have an MBA, but they have a Juris Doctorate. I just leave that on the table. $1.5 billion budget, a third of which is facilities. I didn't hear that mentioned. I'm not quite sure if that was something that came up as part of the input from the community, but I would just put that to your mind, because as I look back over my time here, engaged with the facilities and the budget and everything else that we've been talking about, that might be a consideration for you, as well as a preferred whatever, as long as there's almost a third and it's going to grow, particularly with options. I hear administrative experience, but I didn't hear anything about leadership experience. There's a vast difference between administering a district and leading a district. Hopefully both. I would have to tell you, having worked in districts from 3,000 to 740,000, states up to 2.7 million, there's a huge difference in this size district than that of running a much smaller one and a much larger one. This is a unique number, and you might want to consider the complexity of the district. And that's all I will leave it with, just as observations for your consideration, that I'm sitting here critiquing in my own mind of things based on being in the seat, that it does provide some unique. I didn't hear anything about collective bargaining experience, because that is part of the job description and statute and policy. I do think that's an important piece. I didn't hear anything about policy. Everything that is recommended is coming through superintendent about policy and administrative regulations. I could go on some others, but I just would like to just bring these up for your consideration. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, Dr. Schiller, you bring up some great points. I think the current job description had the MBA, but the for consideration was removing the MBA, is that correct? So that wouldn't be an issue. The JD MBA, I think you're on point there. And then I do like your experience, your leadership experience, because there are some unique individuals that can point out to the leadership experience, and it might bring them up. So I would love that to be discussed as far as a topic. And then I think that brings us to, was there anything else that you wish, you spoke about all of the qualifications under the statutes that we currently have, as far as, you know, a lot of those, I think that they're pertinent to the job. I don't know if we just start listing too many things, if it just becomes a list. So, but with that, I was going to ask if anybody else had any other questions.
I think that some of those things, you know, some of the things that Dr. Schiller mentioned actually are part of our job. So our job description, this is really just the top line. If you go look in our job descriptions, which I think Dr. Thetti sent us back in December, if you want to go back and search in your emails, or you can find them online. It's a little harder to find them off our website. But this is like the top section, right? Here's the requirements, the qualifications, and then there's all this list of things that they do, which includes all those things that you just said. So we can take, when we start revising the job description, I think that's a good point, of things that we can consider and make sure that all those are in the full job description. As far as changes here, I think, you know, it might be worth looking at the option. I don't know where you'd put a JD. Would you put it under, you know, or a master's or this? I'm not sure how that.
I have a suggestion on that.
Yeah.
Master's degree from an accredited college, university, or equivalent, because JD would kind of be considered equivalent,
To a master's.
if that's okay.
Yeah. And then as far as leadership experience, I mean, we can just put another, if we wanted to, you know, 10 years of a successful managerial / administrative / leadership experience, if it, you know, if it moved the board to do that. / I like slashes and hyphens.
May I ask for a clarification on that? Perhaps we would remove managerial and actually replace it with leadership, because you really are looking for a leader, not a manager.
Right.
That's okay?
Yeah.
So
no.
it'd be 10 years of successful leadership / administrative experience. That work
like
for everyone?
that.
I'm seeing heads shake.
Oh, is it going to be a problem to say Florida driver's license?
Oh, yeah, that's going to disqualify some people.
Or able to secure.
That is true. We're looking outside of Florida.
Okay, or able to secure, which means
You can drive. That's what we want, legally.
there's no reason that you can't get a driver's license legally,
Yes.
which means it hasn't been removed in another state.
Right,
Correct.
right, right.
Any other discussion? Okay, I think we're good on this one. Did you
Can
want
I
to
just summarize and
Yeah.
make sure? Yes, thank you. Under required, I have master's degree from an accredited college or university or equivalent. I have 10 years of successful leadership / administrative experience. I have Florida driver's license or able to secure. I'll work on the phraseology there. We have removed experience in a school district with more than 20,000 students, so that's left off. And we did not add the Florida education experience. Just want to make sure I have everything.
Yep,
Okay,
I think that's good.
perfect. Then the next item for your consideration is determination of a salary. Each of you should have a chart in front of you, and I want to explain to you what you see on this chart so I can help you to understand it. Hold on one second, I need to make a note. There was one other thing on the qualities, not the qualifications, but the qualities, because superintendent was correct. I'm not sure that we highlighted the facility item. So you have one on here that says demonstrates knowledge of school finance and efficient budgeting, as well as other business operations. If I can add business and facilities operations. Is that acceptable? Okay, that way we've covered everything superintendent asked. So on the salary chart, what we have in front of you is the listing of the appointed superintendents in Florida by student count, number of full-time employees, annual revenues. What you'll see on the third column from the right is the superintendent base salary that was reported to the Florida Department of Education in 21-22. So if you look on the back, you'll see the link where you can find those specifically listed. It is in accountability data on the Florida Department of Education website. We do that intentionally so that people can't say, you know, we can't chase bonuses and salaries that superintendents get throughout the year based on newspaper articles. We have to have a single source document. So that tells you where our single source document is, and then we pull in that column, the 21-22 salary. We also, for comparative purposes, had the 2021 salary, so you can see how it changed from one year to the other. But what we did do is we added, you'll notice in the current column, the most 5 recent superintendents that had been hired in large districts in Florida. And so, for example, if you'll look at Lee County, the 21-22 salary that was listed for the department is $208,999, but their current superintendent, Bernier, was brought in at $255. So I wanted you to see both the DOE reported data and then the salary that was negotiated since that DOE data was reported. So the next time the DOE data is reported, it'll have Lee County at $255, just to kind of give you a comparison. When we look at Brevard, you will see that you are one up from Lee with some just slightly fewer students. Looking at your current superintendent's salary, as well as the salary for the districts above and below you, which you can see Osceola is currently at $211. However, they're also looking for a superintendent, and that salary is likely to go up. Collier right now is at $275. They're currently looking for a superintendent, also likely to go up. You've got Sarasota currently at $215, looking for a superintendent, likely to go up. St. Lucy's currently at $204, Marion $215. So there's a number of over 200 superintendent-based salaries below you in size, and then the ones above you in size.
And,
yes, sir.
real quick, you had mentioned the ones that are currently going out. We just got, I think we got Charlotte schools came in. You're indicating those other schools like Sarasota and some of the other ones, school districts, not what they've advertised yet because they haven't gotten to that place. You're just saying this is where they're at now.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure.
That is correct. And so we are recommending that you look at, number one, the size of your district. Number two, we think you should have a wide range because you don't know how much experience and how much talent you're going to be bringing in. So we're recommending that you consider a range between 195 and 275. It's a wide range, large district. I'd like to get your feedback.
Ms. Jenkins.
I think that's way too low. Way too low. The amount of superintendent positions that are open across the state of Florida and across the nation, again, if we want the best of the best, there is no way we're getting somebody in here that low. No way. Not someone who's that qualified. The other unique, that's the word I'm going to use, attribute about the state of Florida is the insanely hostile political environment in which our public education systems are in. It's going to have to be tempting for people to come here from out of state. So I think that's incredibly low, if I'm being perfectly honest. I don't think we're getting anyone in here under 275, and I think that's low, if I'm being blunt. If we're going to get somebody with a really solid, rock solid resume, I think we're pushing closer to 3. That's my opinion.
Ms. Campbell?
Yeah, this is a great conversation to have because I think when, especially during election season, there's, everybody's got an opinion. And one of the things that often comes up is how much superintendent gets paid. They get paid too much. They don't take in consideration the CEO of the largest corporation in, in the county, largest employee base. But this is really important data for us to have because the truth is it's not a matter of, it has to do with how are we going to get somebody? How much is it going to pay to get somebody? and to get somebody good. I don't necessarily agree with Ms. Jenkins as far as, I mean, do I think somebody's going to come in for 195? No. But we have to have some wiggle room, because if somebody comes in without a doctorate, there's going to be some negotiations that happen based on degrees, and if they come in and then they earn a doctorate, there might be something that we put in the contract that would allow that to go up. And we have, I think the superintendents and are allowed, like we have in the district, like if you have a master's, there's a supplement for teachers, same thing for a doctor. I think even for cabinet level, there's a supplement, Carol, if there's a supplement for cabinet level and above, or that if you get a doctorate, right, there's a doctoral supplement. It goes, no, doctorate is at the administrative level, I'm pretty sure. So I won't put you on the spot. But what I was going to say is, if we're looking, she supplied us with these 5 most recent. And the only ones in the most recent that are over, actually the only ones on the sheet at all, that are over 300,000 are in the really big school district categories,
Right.
like Orange, 330, just hired. 350 Cartwright, well, for right now. I know they have to go back out and get another one. Broward, 370. Pinellas is still quite a bit larger than us, 290. Lee, quite a bit larger than us, 255. I think that is a good flexible. There's one that's pretty high, Collier. They've been doing that for a couple years. They only have 46,000 students. I want to find out where they're getting all their money, first of all. More than the same sources we're getting. But I think we need to, I think that's a good range. I mean, it leaves it wide open. It seems to be pretty reasonable for the size that we are, and it leaves us some wiggle room. So I think that 195 to 275, I mean, just to put it out there as a range. I'm assuming, I mean, 195, can you kind of explain some of your thinking along the low end of things?
Well, what we were thinking was, you may have somebody that you're taking a chance on that's never had any superintendent experience, but somebody who, for whatever reason, you believe you want to take a chance on. And we wanted to give you enough of a range that if they came in low, sometimes some districts want to bring in someone for maybe 2 years at a lower, and then if they go beyond that, they give them quite a boost. So we were just,
Right.
We also recognize that, this is a very fiscally conservative community.
Right.
And so,
Yeah. No, I like the range, but I think, like I said, I think this is an important conversation, because that goes around, and I'm sure we're not the only community that it goes around, that, the superintendents get paid too much, and this is just the reality of what it takes to get a CEO of that capability into a district like ours. But I'm fine with the range as presented.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Have we thought about saying regionally competitive for the salaries? Because as some of these other our superintendents get hired, I mean, the numbers can change. The average, the idea of we might have, I mean, I know that happens in the coaching realm all the time. Once that top coach goes, the salaries starts to reduce, or go up higher depending on your pool. But the range. Once again, I don't think it's going to scare off the right candidate, because they're going to come in and say that's my job, and we'll talk about what it would take me to get here. I do believe we're going to get the quality candidates. I mean, when I was looking for a job here, many principals said, yeah, I know you're taking a 30% pay cut, but you get that in sun and sand here, coming from the Midwest. So maybe we'll get the Florida discount from superintendents from around the country. So yeah, I highly doubt it. Anyone's going to come here and try to run $1.5 billion corporation for $195,000. I know teachers up north that almost make that teaching 5 classes a day. Not that that's right either, but I mean, if we were going to do anything with the range, I would probably squish it a little bit, leave it on the high end, and 225 and above. I mean, we're talking about somebody with leadership skills, and so if we think we're going to scare off the right candidate by thinking we're a cheap district at putting it at 195, again, people are going to apply, and we're going to pick the right person. So whatever we want to do here, but either not saying it all, just saying regionally competitive, or maybe something like 225 to 275, that range. I don't think we're going to go lower than the last contract we had on that. That's all I have to say on that.
I like your second idea. I don't like the regionally competitive idea, just because I think that then people have to go out and do the research. Right, right. And they get something like this,
Yeah.
and it's widely varied.
Well, I will tell you this, if you say regionally competitive, people from out of state are going to say, what's their range?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So,
But I see the 225 to 275
that makes more sense.
Ms. Wright?
or more.
No, I like what you're saying, Gene. I don't disagree. The 225 to 275 is probably a realistic range.
Yeah.
I mean, but I understand what you're saying on if we're going to take a chance on a candidate that maybe doesn't have every single thing on this list, and we think this is a good candidate that really could benefit our district. I see what you're saying there on the wiggle room and maybe the contract being negotiated differently for that type of a candidate. So honestly, I'm okay with the range that you suggest. You're the expert. You guys are, you know what you're doing when it comes to looking for these candidates. So I trust your judgment on this. So I'm okay keeping it even at the 195 to 275.
I do also want to remind you guys that this is the base salary, not the full compensation
Correct.
package.
Yes.
And so somebody that might get a lower base salary might also want some behavioral, performance compensation, or there's some other pieces. This
Right.
is just the base salary.
Right.
Okay.
So I wanted to kind of take it on a different tour. Currently, many of, and to Ms. Jenkins, I agree with you 100%. Many of the other school districts throughout the nation, their associate superintendents are making what our max is right now. So to attract the best and the brightest in the nation, I believed we had to go a lot higher. The other factor that we're dealing with is that this is not a normal school district, and that we will attract the right people, but if we really want that dynamic person out there that's willing to come down here, I've mentioned it to 3 people. I said, I'm thinking about going to X on the salary, and they said, I'd come for that. And they never even mentioned that they wouldn't before. And these are people that would not be coming, so I'm not saying that they are, but they would say that they would. So when I looked at that, I said, okay, if I'm in Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, wherever that is, and my school district is, because I'm looking at it right now, we have some of the largest, like Miami-Dade's the 4th largest school district in the nation. Hillsboro's number 7, Orange is number 9. I mean, we've got arguably half of the top 10 in our state. So the issue, though, that I run into is that if we're going to attract somebody to come here from out of state, and in a larger district, just like Ms. Jenkins, because I want to honor her requests for that, is that we may have to go higher than what their associate superintendents were making. The other thing is that when we talk about being regionally competitive, if you look at what the salaries are for the CEOs for the corporations that we have just existing here in Brevard, they're higher than what we're offering. And so what we're doing is we're looking at Grumman, we're looking at Boeing, we're looking at L3Harris, NASA, all these big companies, and we're saying, hey, we're looking for a dynamic leader. We are one of the very few opportunities for a school district to try to attract somebody from outside of the norm because of our tie into space, and because this person will be putting together the people who are going to be going to Mars. That's literally what we have. The people that work inside of our schools that get the career and technical trades will be going to space. And I think we need a dynamic look. And it may not be that those people come and apply, but we may need to do that. I would suggest, and this is just me, that we keep the bottom at about, I'm not kidding you, I would keep the bottom at 250, and then I would bring the top up to 350 with an incentive package to 4. And I'll be honest with you, the reason for that is that will attract, and that will send a message that Brevard is going after the best and the brightest in the nation. And that, to me, means a lot. And I think that what we end up doing when we go to lowering it to all those other ones, we're just saying, well, here's what it is. So like if we have somebody we take a chance on, I could see 225, 250. But I also know that if somebody dynamic came and they said, I would come for 350, then those chances are not going to happen if we're stuck at 275. So I think it's the regionally competitive along with our larger school district attraction. If that's where we want to go, I think, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think that, this is the last thing. So I spend a lot of time in a lot of school districts, and there's not much difference once you get to a certain amount on the size, because then all of a sudden it just becomes more, it literally is larger numbers, larger people. But the bottom line is that we can, I don't like not paying our people enough that Miami-Dade does, or Broward. And I don't care that they have more kids. I just think that we have more things that we offer as far as opportunities with space. So that's my thing. I'd like to up it to 350 with an incentive package to 4.
And the taxpayers are screaming into their cell phones right
So-
now.
so let's-
Just gonna take a minute. I hear you, and this is why we're already looking at a range that goes far beyond what we just were paying our superintendent, which we were already being criticized on a regular basis. I would venture from people who don't really understand, but we're still being criticized by the people who are helping us pay the salaries. That's a hard sell. And also filtering down. We have a group of people who work directly under that person. And listen, everybody knows that the buck stops at the seat down at the end of that table. And everybody understands that. And even though really, and it stops with us as elected officials, but we all understand that the person who's getting the phone calls in the middle of the night when something goes wrong is not the 5 of us, it's the person who's going to be sitting down at the end of this table. But I'm not comfortable with going up to 350 with an option for 400. I hear what you're saying, someone coming outside the box, and I like shrinking up a little bit because honestly, putting the 195 out there does seem a little bit kind of like we're lowballing. So just so people will take us seriously, I say we move it up, whether it's to 225 or even just 210 or whatever. I don't want us to put the bottom range any lower than the 225. And if you want to make it 225 to 300, I might go with you there, but we answer to a lot of people in this community who I don't think are ready for that kind of step.
If I can clarify, and I'm not trying to go in between you guys real quick, but this does not mean that if somebody applies that they automatically get to it. It's just saying if we get somebody that is so extremely dynamic that we're willing to go there to get that person. By saying we don't, that's all. I just wanted to let you know. So like if we do get somebody who is in the 225 to 275 range, that's fine. But I'll tell you, like right now, we would literally be saying that the top 10 school districts in the United States, we are not going to attract their CEOs, their superintendents. So anyways, I'm sorry, go ahead. Anybody else, go ahead.
You look like you're ready to push. Go ahead.
No, we may not be in the top 10 in the nation if we're 49th largest in the nation, and that's okay too. And again, thanks for getting us back to reality on this is just the base salary. So I mean, there can be a lot of incentives, like their staff. They need to look at, maybe between now and the time the superintendent starts, our structure doesn't look the same, and our taxpayers might be okay with 300 if there's not as many people in that top group. Who knows? I'm just saying. That stuff needs to continually be looked at. If we kept everything exactly the same as we have now, and we come out with that position $150,000 a year more, I'm never turning on my phone. I don't know how dynamic that person would have to be for that to happen. So I will give him Matt's number and change mine. But yeah, if we want to increase it a little bit there, but again, just like we could read when we have required and preferred requirements for them to apply, if we're talking a select few, if Superman or woman walks in and applies, we could always say, well, we're going to have to go outside the range to get this person to come here and accept this. But to put it out there at the beginning, it might be sending the wrong message that everyone who does apply, well, why would you're going to hire me, but you're going to hire me at the bottom? So I would almost have it, the reverse is us let's take that individual on an individual basis, and if they come in and they're just perfect, and we can offer more, we can always do that. But to actually put that in writing, I think we would be really setting ourselves up for a nightmare between now and then. So I think that's probably enough on that. Well, I still like the 225. I do like bringing that up there. And if we want to, and I'll split the difference there too. If we go up to 295, something like that, or even 300, but 225 to 300. I have a feeling things might be, look a little different around here by the time we actually hire a superintendent. They may be able to come in. There's some temporary positions out there. I don't know how that would look. I don't know how the other districts are in Florida, where they can come in and bring in a little bit of their own team. I think we have some interim positions, for top cabinet positions that is very attractive. I know if I were applying for a superintendent's job or a head coaching position, if I could bring my offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and special teams guy in, or person, that maybe I'll take a little bit less. But if other districts only have one position available, that matters. So maybe you can enlighten us a little bit on that. I'd like to get that out as soon as possible. I mean, to see what this new person could actually bring with them, how much of a team they could bring in, if that matters on being attractive. Okay.
Ms. Wright?
Okay, I'm with you on bumping the minimum. I'm not with you at the top where you're at. I just can't justify it. When I look at Miami-Dade and they have a budget that is 4 times ours, and we're talking about paying our superintendent more than they're paying theirs, that's hard. That, for me, I just can't get there. Their population, their students, their employees, everything is drastically larger than our district. So I'm okay with saying, hey, let's bump the minimum up to the 225 to attract a more qualified candidate. I'm okay with, I would say I would want to stop it at 300 would be probably my very top that I would be at for base salary.
Okay. Just so everybody knows.
Can I go, please, for my?
Yeah, Ms. Jenkins, sure.
Thank you. I find it interesting that we started this conversation where I made that exact statement and then we went backwards and now we're back there again. I find it very interesting. There was a statement that we may not scare off a candidate with $195,000. Yes, we will scare off a candidate with $195,000. Absolutely will. Taking a chance. I'm not taking a chance on anybody. We should be getting a very qualified pool of candidates to look at. I ain't taking a chance on anybody because we owe it to our community to not be taking a chance. Because I don't know if we've been paying attention, but our community wasn't pleased with the decision that was made, nor are the leaders of the industries within this community. Those same leaders, as Mr. Susan restated, who are making a significant amount more money than a superintendent that we're bringing into the school district, who should be an everyday partner with those industries. I had a meeting the other day, and I'm not going to get specific here because they're debating whether or not they're going to say it themselves, that I was informed that a significant number of industry leaders in this county are very concerned about the actions that were taken by this board when it comes to our superintendent firing and the discipline conversation, because they are having trouble recruiting people in already for those jobs. They're calling them and asking questions about the school system. You can tap your finger all you want, Mr. Susan. You need to take a minute to think about the decisions we're making for this position. It is so critically important. It doesn't just impact this school system. It impacts the businesses and industries around us, never mind the children that we work with every single day. This is a very, very, very important decision. I'm not taking a chance on anybody. And I hear you, Andrea, when you say that this is a fiscally conservative community. I argue that from the day we made this terrible decision, because we've already spent a ton of money by making this decision we should have never made. And unfortunately, that same day I argued that, I made this very same statement. By firing our superintendent, we now have an issue of supply and demand. And how it works in industry and in business is that you're going to be totally fine with getting somebody who's less qualified than the person before. It doesn't make any sense. There is no way we are getting a qualified candidate in here under $250,000 And I do not believe we're going to get a superior candidate for under $300,000. This is very, very important. And Mr. Trent, I'm going to tell myself you didn't just threaten the jobs of our cabinet members here in public. Because I don't know if you all forgot, but you just voted for an organizational chart that increased the number of staff members, not decreased. So out of respect for the people who work for us and do the day-to-day work, I'm going to say, I'm sorry you had to sit here and listen to that. Because I do not wish for our next superintendent to come in and replace you or remove your positions to make their salary higher. That's a non-negotiable for me as well. And that's going to be a non-negotiable for the taxpayers as well. For the industry leaders who are already concerned about the stability of this school district. Insanity, absolute insanity. This responsibility is so tremendous, so tremendous. Is it funny to you, Miss Wright?
It is.
It is?
You are.
Great.
All right.
Miss Jenkins.
No, sir,
We're
I am
not-
not done.
if you-
Point of order, I am not done,
Point of
sir.
order,
Point of order,
Paul.
I am not done, sir. You do not have the
I
floor.
have an opportunity
No,
because you
sir.
did something
I
in the
am not
middle of
done.
it. Paul,
No, sir.
can
Point
you
of order.
explain that part of point of order during
of
Robert's
order.
rules is to address the chairman, not other
Point
school
of order.
board members?
Point
Mr.
of order.
Paul,
That would be correct. All comments should be directed toward the chairman.
so Ms. Jenkins, if
So,
you can
Ms. Wright,
address,
please don't
if you
direct
can
your comments
address
to
your
me.
comments.
Yes, say the
to
same thing to
me.
Ms. Wright, please, sir.
Well, the issue is that you're
Mr.
the one
Susan,
lobbying
I
them.
am sick
So,
and
thank
tired
you.
of your
Thank you
rules
for
being
addressing
applied
me.
to one school
They're
board member and not
Robert's
the
rules.
rest of them.
They're Robert's
You
rules.
don't know Robert's rules, sir.
I just
No, you
asked the
don't.
parliamentarian and he just verified it.
Absolutely not.
I
Listen to
just
me.
did.
I am sick and tired of being disrespected by certain members of this board, and I will speak out whenever I feel. This is an extreme responsibility to our community. And the fact that you're laughing about it up here is ridiculous.
Nobody's laughing about the decision that we're making
Really?
here.
Really?
I'm
Point of
not.
order.
You're supposed to
Point of
be.
order. Give me a break. Absolutely ridiculous.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. I've spent some time with many of the,
I'm sure
it's a good time to talk about the business leaders because they are very interested in expressing their gratitude for a possible superintendent in videos. And I think that that's something that we should do. I forgot it, actually, if there's an opportunity. Many of our leaders inside the community, I've met with them, and they're excited about being a part of the process that we have, the vocal process. So they asked if they could do like 1-minute videos saying, hey, we're Brevard, this is who we are, all the way from many of the leaders of our corporations and in government across our county. So I might work with Tammy to try to set that up. So did anybody else wish to talk about the actual salary? I'm glad, Ms. Jenkins, that you agree and that I agree with you in the fact of raising that base salary up. So here's what I would say. Let me just say this. We are a dynamic school district that is better than all of these, right? Like all of them. I promise you, we are better than Miami-Dade, better than Hillsborough, better than all of them. Mullins' total salary was $310,000. Just so everybody knows, it wasn't $225,000. We raised it up $225,000 plus incentives, plus some other stuff that was inside there. I just found that out because Dr. Schiller made us drive it. And then, you know, how about this? Here's a little outside thought. What if we were to say, okay, the salary is between $225,000 and $300,000 plus incentives in the future, right? But what if we put in there, if you are an interesting, dynamic individual who's out there that wishes to apply to become a part of the school system, and you don't fit in that salary range, would we at least put them on another thing and say we might consider you? Because that's what I'm trying to get at is like, we had very close a chancellor to come to the school district. We might be able to attract a chancellor from another school district, but we can't do that with the 300. That's all. So would you guys be willing to put something like that in there? And that way you're not saying it, it's a specific special case?
I'm going to go back to something that I think Mr. Trent said, and that is, or maybe it was Ms. Wright. Once we put it on paper, we better be ready to pay it. And you say $300,000 salary, that was package, that's not salary package, including insurance and benefits and all that stuff. But this is the base, this is where we are, and my responsibility to the taxpayers of the county, I can't see moving that in that high of a range. Like I said, I will move the bottom up to 225, but I can't see the top going past. I'm not comfortable with putting the top of the base salary of the very first year they come to us. And I hear you. There are definitely going to be people we already know from other places in the country who aren't willing to come to Florida, period. This is where we are. I also know sometimes we talk about what happens in other states, and whether it's teachers or superintendents or principals, Florida, the cost of living is much lower here than in many, many other places. And it's higher in some places. It's higher than my home state. But it's lower than, I mean, to say if you're going to talk about California, for example, you better be paying them $1.5 million because they can't even buy a house. But we are responsible. This is what our taxpayers are going to look at, is something like this, because it's publicly available. We're going to pay $350 when, like you said, Hillsborough, Broward, Miami-Dade are so much larger than us. Who do we think we are? And now, I agree. We should boast and brag. We have an amazing school district, but we're also responsible. And that responsibility cannot put the top of the base salary above $300,000.
Okay, I think we're right at 300. Are you guys willing to say that plus incentives that might reach to 350?
Well, I believe that's when, in this, if it's okay for me to speak.
Absolutely, I'm sorry.
That's what you had mentioned, was this is base salary, and if you're a superintendent candidate, you probably understand that base salary is not the end point, but the beginning. So
Good.
that would, if we're talking base salary, yeah, I mean, you said yourself what Dr. Mullins was 225, and it was over 300, 310. I think that's it's understood.
Okay.
If I can, for a moment, because I was mentioned, I don't do this often, but I just cannot allow this narrative to continue that this board made a mistake and now we're paying for it. Can't allow it. I don't want to hear that anymore. We made the decision, and we go on. We made it based on what we felt was right for this district, and we are going to pay for the leadership to take charge of Brevard and go forward. It's not an added expense because of the decisions that we made in the past. We made those decisions that got us in these seats. And I've not gotten those same emails or phone calls. I'm not hearing that from the business community out there. So I'm very confident in the decisions we've made. I'm kind of tired of sitting up here with the picture being painted that we have our tails between our legs because of decisions we've made. I think we're making the right decisions for this county. We are fiscally conservative in Brevard. We're actually conservative in Brevard. So those are the people that we respond to, and that's what we're going to have moving forward. So I would look at other counties if it doesn't fit your narrative, but not in Brevard.
Thank you, Mr. Trent. Last up, Ms. Wright.
And again, I am back to the salary, focusing on this. I agree, let's bump up the minimum, because I don't want someone to look at this and go, I'm not even going to apply, because 195 is just nowhere in the realm of what I am going to accept. But when you're talking base salary, so I would be in agreement of let's bump up the minimum. Let's take the maximum to, we have to agree on a number. Again, base salary. We don't want a candidate to say, hey, I'm not going to apply because that base salary is not there, because the reality of it is this is all negotiable, right? I mean, it is. So when you're looking at the base salary, we want anybody who feels like they're qualified and ready to come and work with us and help our district out. 300 is kind of where I'm capped at for base salary.
Okay. All right, and then plus incentives and the negotiations can get us other places. Thank you, Ms. Campbell. I appreciate that. I think everybody here gave some passionate speeches. I think that we are good. I think everybody's weighed in. I think the direction is 225 to 300 plus incentives, and I think that's good. And then we have a couple other topics to discuss, don't we, Ms. Messina?
Mr. Chair, I just want to confirm from the board, and maybe this actually would go to your attorney. Do you have any policy that determines limit to the years of the contract, 2-year, 3-year contract? Is there any provision that I need to be aware of?
Yeah. We usually just negotiate the contract. I would say historically, they've been 3-year max.
So can I advertise, is prepared to offer up to a 3-year contract and up to gives you a 2 or a 3 or however you,
Well, usually the standard procedure in our county is a 3-year contract with 2 one-year extensions, but this is a little different, just so you know. So like we strive to try to continue to keep that. So the 3 years is kind of consistent. I'd like to hear from my board members. This is where we're going to offer the contract. But just for point of clarification, that's what we do. We do a 3-year and either a 1-and-1 or a 2-year extension on it.
the reason I ask is because a 2-year contract is not as desirable as a 3-year contract. And so if they know that through negotiations, they can get up to a 3-year contract, that is more of an incentive than up to a 2-year contract.
And is a 4-year contract more incentivized than a 3-year contract?
Potentially.
All right, I'll wait for the other board members to speak. Ms. Campbell.
I think up to 3 is good. And because there is a chance, we talked about taking a chance on somebody, whatever that may be, may look differently. But if there's, there may be, it leaves us a little wiggle room, but also gives them a little wiggle room in the back and forth of the negotiations. So I think we need to leave it to our standard practice of up to 3.
Mr. Trent?
Standard practice sounds perfect in this.
Okay.
It's-
I'm in agreement.
All right. Ms. Jenkins?
I didn't ask to speak. Thank you.
Okay. I agree. 3 years is standard. And not only that, but you don't want to start getting too far past that. So I think that that's it. Now, you don't really talk about extensions because what we did with Dr. Mullins is we, you know what I mean, we negotiated those after the 3 years and stuff like that. So, okay. I think your next
So
step.
up to a 3-year contract is
Yes,
fine?
yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so then what I should tell you is the final item that we need to discuss today, or I need to inform you about today, is the advertisement venues. You should have a list, and as you can see from the listing, the top items there, not all of the places where we typically would find superintendent applicants require any payment, but the American Association of School Administrators is a very popular place where people look. The Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, Education Week, Florida Association of School Administrators, and the National Alliance of Black School Educators. Those are all places that we find people look to when they're looking for a superintendent position. So those are the ones that we would recommend, wondering if that meets your approval.
Was that?
Board?
Those were included in, when we talked about the estimates on the front end,
Yes.
this was all what we had planned out. No,
Right.
I'm fine with that. You've got 30 days and 60 days. Since we're only leaving it open for 30 days,
It would be the 30-day
it would be a
amount.
30-day price. Okay, thank you.
The one item, the Education Week top school jobs, they just changed how they advertise, and they don't allow for a 30-day, so
Right.
that one is where.
How fast, when, for some of these, are they putting it online so it's immediate? Because I know some of them
Yes.
do like paper publications, but this is going to be in their digital
It's
access.
online.
Okay. all right.
Yeah.
So it can
And-
be almost immediate.
We discussed in your timeline, they would go up on Friday,
Okay.
and so then they'll start being available on Friday. And typically, these venues, these platforms, sometimes feed into like some of the Yahoo searches and some of the, what are some of the, I'm sorry, the
Like the job search.
Indeed type
Right,
things,
right.
they'll kind of
Monster.
pop up through that because they're connected through these.
Thank you.
Looks good to me.
Good. Did you guys say that you wanted to advertise in all those those options on top? Yep. Like the Hispanic and the Black school educators and all that stuff? We good on that? Good?
And just to clarify, these are not additional costs to us. These are included in the cost of hiring FSBA for.
No,
this.
these were, when we submitted the list, it's kind of broken out separately because these are direct pay.
Okay. I mean, honestly, I'm okay with just picking the top one, the American Association of School Administrators. I mean, but if you think there's a benefit to advertising in all of them,
Yeah,
we can
I think
advertise in all of them.
Education Week's pretty big, if I may. And then I would, to be honest with you, it sends a message of, hey, we would like to see, you know what I mean, the other
Yeah.
areas, because I think that if we didn't add the Latino, the black school educators, stuff like that, I think that that's appropriate. You know, I think that that would be great. For me, I say we advertise where we can, but that's just me, and I'm sorry. but
Right.
I would
No,
normally let you go
that's
first.
fine. Do we belong, does Brevard belong into any of these associations that would allow us to have some advertisement in there without additional costs?
Typically, well, if you are, it would go through your HR department, and they would already be there, but these are the prices that they give their members. As far as I will confirm that, but I believe that to be true.
Okay.
Superintendent, you have to also understand, advertising for superintendents, some of these, they see that as like the revenue as opposed to principals, assistant principals. They know they can charge for superintendent search.
Right.
So sometimes that's how that, because of the position itself, sometimes it falls in a different category. Like the Education Week, they just bifurcated that out like 2 weeks ago. And they only for superintendents, and it's only for 60 days. It didn't used to be that way.
Good.
Anybody else?
All right, then we are going to update the qualifications, the qualities, everything with the recommendations that you gave today. We will be working with your staff to get these up on Friday, and we will start getting application packets. They're going to be coming in to Mr. Reichert. I do want to confirm, typically what we ask for an application packet is a cover letter, a copy of your current resume, maximum of 3 letters of recommendation, and just to kind of give you an idea, we say maximum of 3 so that they're very discerning in the ones that they include. We did have people before that, we had one guy that brought in a radio flyer with plaques and things to kind of demonstrate the affirmation of his character and of being a superintendent. So just, we limit it so that you all have some focus. And we also ask for a copy of their transcripts from their highest degree attained. We tell them very clearly that the certified copy of the transcripts will be required if they end up being a finalist later, but right now we want at least a copy of the transcript of the highest degree attained, with the assumption that the other degrees would have been verified in order to get to the highest. Those, that packet, upon completion, which means all of the pieces are present, then it all gets submitted to Mr. Reichert. Mr. Reichert will assign it a number. So let's say Mr. Trent is applying and we're still waiting on one of his letters of recommendation, and then Ms. Wright applies, but she has everything. She gets applicant number 1 because her packet is complete. And then when Mr. Trent's 3rd letter comes in, he becomes applicant number 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. So we number the applicants. You'll have the name, the number, we'll have the email, the phone number, all that kind of stuff. When we share them with your staff to post them onto the website, we typically will do that once a week so that all of the ones that come in, as I said, Mr. Reichert will get them. He works with the applicants. If they say, I'm waiting on this, waiting on that, he kind of bird dogs them, gets them all for the week in a single packet, digital. We'll send it to your staff. Staff will typically share it with the board and then post it onto your superintendent search portal so that your community can be reviewing the application packets along with you. So all of those will come in once a week. You'll get an update. Here's 3 applications, 2 applications, however many come in. I do want to remind you, I think we spoke about this when we were out at the zoo that time, the bulk of the applications will come in the last 2 or 3 days. That's typically because of the Sunshine Law. And the sooner somebody applies, the sooner they're having to answer questions, their name appears. You will also be hearing anybody that applies, I don't care who it is, I think I mentioned this before, you're going to start getting emails from people who love this candidate and people who hate this candidate.
We're used to that around here.
And the appropriate response is, thank you. We look forward to taking all pertinent information into account. You please do not engage, just thank you for your information. If somebody is interested in applying and they want some information and they call you for any reason, they call you, Ms. Campbell, you say, I really am not at liberty to discuss this with you, please call Andrea Messina, Bill Vogel, John Reichert. Refer them to us. The minute you start talking to somebody, then rumors start, and that just will undermine the credibility of the process. So anybody that's interested, thank you for your interest. Talk to our search facilitation team. One of the things that's really valuable from today's conversation, what I take away is that if I brought to you a really superstar applicant, you might be willing to consider, if salary was a deal breaker for that person, I could say, listen, here's this candidate, but I got to tell you, you're going to have to go higher than 300 to get them.
Yeah.
I heard you guys say, I might not like it, but if that's what I have to do, I might be open to hearing about it. So I appreciate the conversation today. More than anything, our goal is to have a have a process that is above reproach for the applicants and for the board and for your staff, because we can't have anybody accusing anyone of favoritism or getting special treatment or getting inside information or anything like that. So just please refer them to us. We are happy and consistently talking to people. As you probably know, it took me a number of hours to get here from Tallahassee. And so when I, as a matter of fact, is today Wednesday? No, tomorrow's Wednesday. I'm talking to somebody from out of state Wednesday. I said, I'll be in my car Wednesday. Here's the window. And I stack up the phone calls and talk to the people, because people are already calling, people are already asking questions, and we're excited to get the advertisements posted.
Yay. Thank you.
Everybody good? Ms. Messina, thank you so much for all your dedication and hard work. We really appreciate it. Anything we can do, any hiccups, please call. We can make things happen. We have great staff, and we're excited to see what the next steps are. Thank you. All right, let me open this back up. Yeah, I was just going to say, if you guys would like, we could take a 5-minute recess real quick. Thank you. Welcome back. Before we get started with the transportation, just 30-second comment real quick. I was looking at the 000s for review, right? And one of the issues that we have is that many of the policies that we had go farther back than like 2012, 2010. When I was looking at the statutes, they were 2014. So I'm looking at the policy. The statute is telling me like 5 or 6 extra things than what was in the policy, and the statute was from like 2014, right? So what I was trying to do is if we were to discuss the 000s without the Neola and statutory updates with the yellow lines, we may be trying to say we wanted to add stuff that may or may not be a part of statute. So basically, Paul had gotten all of the Neolas and statutes for the zeros and the 1000s. And he had asked, he said, look, it's probably, and I actually kind of led the conversation and just said, it would be better if we had all of those together when we're reviewing them. And so, Paul, did you want to talk real quick about it?
I was just gonna say, I can email you all the ones or zero, and the ones and zeros, but Mr. Susan had said Neola has an option that you can log in and see every district's policies, even the ones that they've done in-house for their counties. I can get with Neola and see how we do that. I don't know about that, I'll have to confirm it, but in the meantime, I'll email you the zip files for all the zeros and ones, even the ones that we haven't adopted in the past. So if there's one that's not on our books that maybe you guys are like, hey, we really like this, I want to bring it forward for, you know, recommending we adopt here, you can see all of them, not just the ones that we've gotten.
So the first part was, let's get the current updated red line version so that we're discussing it directly, right? And then the second piece is that I found out while we were out, just as of this morning, that there's actually in board docs through Neola an opportunity that we would be able to search all the other school districts in Florida that may have similar policies. So we might be able to find better ideas, stuff like that. So with that, I would ask that I was going to move it to the 7th as discussion, and just kind of push those off, if that's okay with everybody, just with the circumstances. We okay? Good, everybody?
Oh, yeah.
Sound good? All right, next, Ms. Campbell, you good?
Yeah, just to
Sorry,
clarify,
you
then
were-
what are we, so today, on tap for today was going to be all of the 000s.
Yes, ma'am.
And then those 1, 2, 3, 4 from the 1000s and 3 from the 2000s that were listed, is that in
The ones that are listed, let me just
It says,
find out.
and other related policies. There were ones that had to do with the superintendent, administrative procedures.
Yeah, those are all, those drafts, all that stuff, we
Okay.
just,
I
because
just want to
the-
make sure we know what we need to be preparing
Mm-hmm.
for. Obviously, we've already looked through these for
Yep.
today, but what, you know, so just so it's clear, we're moving everything back a little bit.
Yeah, because even the board powers and all of those things hadn't been updated in so long. They were referring, one of them referred to a statute that didn't even have any reference to what we were, it was just, it's just old.
Right.
So I think that works, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
And what we'll do is go from the transportation plan through those other issues. So, next topic's the transportation plan. Dr. Schiller will be providing the board with this information.
Thank you, Mr. Susan, members of the board. As you may recall, about 2 weeks ago, you directed the interim superintendent to study the issues and the problems regarding transportation and to bring forward recommended solutions. Today, members of our work group that I established are here to present where we are to date. They've been working with me around the clock, truly a very strong effort. I would just like, before they begin, I would just like to reiterate that this whole issue of transportation is quite complicated. It has many interrelated matters and not a single solution that will solve all matters. Anything that is a complex problem that has a simple solution is wrong, because simple solutions do not address long-term issues nor prospective issues. So with that in mind, there are many matters, and I want to turn this over right now to members of our work group led by Rashad Wilson, our Chief Operating Officer. Rashad, thank you, and your members, for all the very hard work you're doing with us, with me, virtually every day. Thank you.
All right. Chairman Susan, board members, and Superintendent Schiller. Monday last week, Dr. Schiller facilitated a new transportation work group to address the transportation mountain. identified the hills and rocks, which are big and small challenges, and develop a plan to resolve them. This is a large focus issue or mountain for transportation, as the department has had little attention to continuous improvement over the years. These work group members represent the cross-functional assistance needed to improve transportation. The team led by Dr. Schiller include myself, Russell Cheatham, Assistant Superintendent, Chief Information Officer, Cindy Lazinski, Chief Financial Officer, Dr. Carol Green, Interim Chief HR Officer and Director of Labor Relations, and Attorney Paul Gibbs. Additionally, Cynthia Rayan, my project manager, Dr. Miller, Transportation Service Director, and Jefferson Smith, Assistant Director of Transportation Services, bring technical expertise and in-depth knowledge of transportation to the work group. This cross-functional approach will improve problem-solving and lead to smarter, more sustainable solutions. The first work group meeting was primarily spent on identifying the hills and rocks, or challenges, that are facing transportation. 3 hills identified were retention and recruitment, operations, and fleet management. On the retention and recruitment hill, the rocks identified were salary and benefits, working conditions, and bus driver training. On the operations hill, identified rocks were the EduLog bus routing system, including possible add-on modules or software updates, other software options, and Bell schedules. On the fleet management hill, the rocks identified were parts inventory, maintenance technicians, and a fleet replacement plan. Our strategies are analysis of salary, staffing, and benefits. We are currently gathering transportation salary, staffing, and benefits information from our 3 peer counties, Osceola, Seminole, and Volusia, to help formulate a compensation strategy that is internally equitable and externally competitive. Next, reaffirm bus driver discipline referral process. The work group has already addressed the retention challenge of bus driver working conditions by refining the process for bus drivers to report a discipline incident. A memo was sent to the leadership team, BASA, 1010, BFT, Transportation, and school board members, reaffirming the process. If you will, there's an updated version to that memo, and we took what happened. We used the information from the Discipline Steering Committee to make the appropriate adjustments and changes within the memo. Next, we have the cost-benefit analysis of the routing system options. We are developing a cost-benefit analysis to address the potential upgrading of the current EduLog routing system to their new and improved Athena solution, or choosing routing software option, choosing a new routing software altogether. Next, we have our implement inventory management system. The Titusville Bus Shop inventory management system has been completed with part location by shelf, row, and box number. This method will be implemented at the South and Central bus shops. This will improve transportation's ability to identify which and how much stock to order at what time. It will also eliminate over-purchasing items by allowing shops to transfer from shop to shop. And lastly, develop a fleet replacement plan. We are working on a yellow and white fleet replacement plan to know what vehicles are going to cost and for how long we will have them. This will yield a consistent schedule for vehicle maintenance and replacement. This is a staffing snapshot of transportation staffing levels. For school year 2022-23, transportation was allocated 276 8-hour positions for a total of 2,208 hours. Bus drivers are staffed from 6 to 8 hours depending on their routes. Also, as of February 15th, we have 233 bus drivers working from 6 to 8 hours for a total of 1,656 hours. This means we have 552 allocated hours remaining, which can be used to hire 92 6-hour bus drivers or 69 8-hour bus drivers, or any combination in between. We currently have 16 technician vacancies based on our 29 allocated positions. All technician positions are 8-hour positions. From the start of school year 22-23, we hired 34 bus drivers and lost 60 for a net hired to loss of -26. I think there's a document that you received in the pack that gives you from August to February 15th, if I'm not mistaken, of the people we have lost. We have hired 3 technicians and lost 2, so we have a positive of net 1. Both technicians and 22 bus drivers have left the district due to low wages. Our strategic plan to have 50% of buses, our yellow fleet, below the industry standard life cycle of 10 years was met in 2021. We started in 2019 at 36%. Today, we are at 55.4% of our 426 buses being under 10 years old. Our white fleet includes pickups, sedans, SUVs, vans, trucks, semi-trucks, and wreckers. The transportation white fleet age has increased over the years, which lends to the high numbers of 295 vehicles being older than 10 years. This was due to several factors, including lack of funding, moving white fleet ownership to departments, and more. Transportation has diligently selling older buses and purchasing new buses every year to keep our fleet at an optimum level. The data shows, as a result of the last 3 years of selling and buying buses, we have 40 less buses in our fleet. This slide shows the yellow fleet replacement funds budgeted each year since 2016. Although budgeted, amounts have gone up the last couple years. Over the last year, bus prices have gone up twice due to supplier cost. On July 1, 2022, the State of Florida Department of Education amended last year's school bus contracts with increased prices, and the new contract effective January 1, 2023 includes another price increase. This means what used to buy 30 buses will now only buy 25 buses. Delivery time has also suffered in these economic times. On past contracts, lead time was 240 days to receive buses. Oh my God. Currently, lead times have exceeded 1 year. For example, we are still waiting for delivery on our buses. The purchase order issued on 11/3/2021, we expect this delivery to finally be here in March, which is over 480 days. Over the years, white fleet replacement funds have been reduced due to funding and competing priorities. This has resulted in our largely older white fleet. In years past, the white fleet replacement funds flow to the transportation budget. Transportation, based on department input, would purchase vehicles and place them district-wide. Due to inventory management and department needs, this process was adjusted a couple years ago by having individual divisions or departments request White Fleet dollars in their budgets. Transportation continues to assist by sourcing what they need, getting quotes, and ordering them. Analysis of the last few years of data shows that we have substantially reduced our routes from 349 routes in 2020 to 249 routes today. This resulted due to several factors, including COVID, charter school participation, lack of bus drivers, route consolidation, etc. Our project for school year 23-24 is our projection for school year 23-24 is 226 routes based on eliminating all double and triple routes and double backs, as well as bus driver salary increase so that we can gain applicants. This slide is a workflow work schedule of our work group. Our work group schedule is as follows. The analysis of salary, staffing, and benefits is dependent upon peer district response to data request, as well as expertise and ability of staff to complete in a timely manner. This is currently in process. The bus driver discipline and referral process memo was complete and sent on February 15th. With your blessings, I will send the updated version out this evening. Spring negotiation is where we will examine if adding 1 or 2 training days to the bus driver contract to increase bus driver training can happen. This is dependent upon the local 10-10 bargaining process. The cost-benefit analysis of routing system options is in process. We will be able to implement our inventory management system in the south and central shops by June 30th, 2023. And lastly, a yellow and white fleet replacement plan is in process. I have with me Dr. Michael Miller and the Director of Transportation, as well as Jefferson Smith, the Assistant Transportation Director, to assist with any questions if there be so.
Do any board members wish to discuss the presentation? Thank you so much, Rashad. This is a lot. This is, since we've been on here, this is probably one of the most comprehensive overviews. Let's get to work, rally the flag. So I really want to, my applaud to you and staff and Dr. Schiller. Thank you very much. I just want to say that. I have my notes, but I go last. So who would like to go first?
I'll go if nobody wants to go.
Ms. Wright.
Okay. Mr. Wilson, you made a comment that the White Fleet dollars were placed in department budgets rather than transportation. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I'm just not sure why that would happen or how that happened.
We decided to move the dollars to the different departments. They knew their needs, and then transportation was not the one that made the decision what vehicle was purchased and which department would get it.
Can you give me an example of like what department would you put a White Fleet?
Maintenance.
In maintenance, okay.
Maintenance, food services, ET,
Okay.
surplus.
Okay. And then when we're looking at the data here, you know, it looks like obviously we need some new buses, but the underlying issue is we need bus drivers, right? We need
Yes.
drivers. And based on everything in your experience, Dr. Miller, what's the #1 reason that you think we need more bus drivers or that we don't have enough bus drivers?
The two top reasons, the reason we need bus drivers is because of salary and because of student discipline.
Okay. And have you looked at your budget year to date for what is slated to be remaining in the transportation department for unused funds for these salaries that we're not able to obviously pay since we don't have the driver in place?
We give back close to $2 million a year in unused budget.
Okay. All right, I'm going to hold my questions for right now and let someone else go.
Mr. Trent, Ms. Campbell, Ms. Jenkins, anybody? Okay, Ms. Campbell?
First of all, I also thank you for presentation, all the work that you guys and the whole team did on this. So going back to just, because this is not the world, that we live in all the time, right? It's transportation, but just to clarify. So the 6-hour, 8-hour positions. So I know by contract, all of our bus drivers are guaranteed 6 hours, whether they have a short day and they only drive 4. I know that never happens.
Not today.
Right. But if, our drivers are all the time, and especially now, having to pick up an extra route or somebody's out and they're going to double back or whatever, that they're hourly. So if they're normally a 6-hour bus driver, but that day they did 8 or even sometimes, let's say 10, let's say there was a wreck or whatever, they're getting paid their hourly for what they actually put in, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, whether they're 6 or 8. But the 8, I'm assuming, gets to the preference of picking those routes so that they know they're guaranteed those 8 hours every day. Is that, am I?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The drivers, they work anywhere from 6 to 8 hours, but it's usually the same every day.
Okay, okay. So then going to the fleet. So besides you talked about when it switched from transportation, the white fleet, transportation, going from you to the departments. Besides the purchasing, how else are we supporting that fleet? Do we support with scheduling, maintenance?
We do all the maintenance on all the vehicles in the county. We have 12 technicians that are working on 400 and some white fleet every 30 days.
Okay.
And then we have close to 700 white fleet.
Okay, and that includes, and Ms. Wright, I think it includes if you go to any of our schools that have like a blast program or those minivans that they're driving
Yes.
to take the students out to workplaces or whatever, that includes that as well. So we're supporting them with all the maintenance. We're supporting them with purchasing when they need something. When you do the maintenance, are you guys kind of keeping up with shelf life of each of those vehicles, making recommendations? Hey, you've probably only got another year left on this vehicle. You need to start budgeting for purchase of a new one, or how does that work?
Yeah, they're in touch with our truck shop, and they
Okay.
make those decisions. It gets to a certain point to where they're not cost effective to repair.
Right, just like our
Yeah.
everyday vehicles. Well, I'm just wondering, so when, let's just say a school that has a minivan that stays there at their school, right? They use it for blast, they use it for taking students out every day. When it starts getting to the end of their shelf life, that would be, I'm assuming, would be under like student services, because that would be an ESE. type.
ESE.
Then is that department having to save up in budget? Because I know, okay, next year we're going to need to buy a new vehicle, so we need to put in our budget
Yes.
enough money. Okay, so that's no longer in transportation, so every department is having to save up for that.
Yes.
But-
Each department goes to budgeting.
Okay, but initially, when it went from transportation to the departments, that was budget that fell under your department, so it went out. So
Yes.
they're not having to pull it out of their existing budget. They were each allotted a certain amount per year.
Yes.
Okay,
And
just
we
wanted to make
still-
sure I got my
and
brain straight.
We still assist with getting the quote, making the actual purchase.
Right.
We're just not providing hours.
And we're making sure
Right.
that the vehicle meets the standards for whatever the use is.
Right, and it has to become under our current contracts.
Yes.
They have to purchase from our approved vendors
Yes.
that the board has approved and
But
all of that.
the parts and the replacements are all coming out of the transportation budget.
Right. Okay. We may come back to that, but that's all I had for that. I just wanted to make sure I had my brain straight. And then on the routing system. So it seems like we just did that, and since I've been on the board. So my question is, are we dissatisfied with our current routing system? Because I thought we put in something that was like with the GPS, and it was supposed to help us do all that. Are we just finding that it's not?
We're talking two different things.
Oh, okay.
The EduLog system is the routing system that we actually use.
Okay.
The GPS, the Reaxium, is our GPS and our student tracker.
Okay, but didn't we also put in, I'm absolutely mixing those things up, I'm sure I am. But I was thinking we also instituted a new routing system in the last 4 years. Am I wrong?
We had EduLog when I got here 4 years ago.
Okay, so this is looking at, we may need
An
to.
update.
Right. So I'm assuming then if it's on here, then we are dissatisfied with how it's going right now.
We've looked at a couple of presentations of other companies
Okay.
to see if their product meets our needs better. But Edgelog has a new version coming out called Athena,
Okay.
and we have a presentation on that this Friday
Okay,
to
so
see
you'll
if
be
we
able
want to go
to.
to the upgrade of that.
Now, is Edgelog something that we pay year to year, or is it something we paid once and we got it, and so if we buy something
We
new, we
p-
have to pay
We
again?
pay year to year,
Okay, so it could be just swapping out cost for cost.
yes.
We're not going to have to budget to buy a new system. Okay. Is that pretty normal in industry standards to pay
Yes,
year to year? So we know we're going to have a recurring cost of that.
yes.
Okay, that's
And-
all I have right now.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Anybody else wish to discuss the topics at hand? Mr. Trent? Ms. Jenkins? No?
No, good, thanks.
All right, my turn? Okay. So you had mentioned that you refined the referral reporting system. It's been a real big deal for me since like September. Can you go through that with me, what the deal is and everything else?
The document that you have or should have, that has highlights on it, was the document that was
Right, went out.
created,
Yep.
went out. And according to Dr. Schiller, they were doing the discipline steering committee. There were some individuals within the committee that wanted to, that had some concerns, wanted to make some additions. And we took into consideration, added those updates to the memo, and wanted you guys to take a look at it first, and I'm going to send it back out to the masses once you had the opportunity to take a look at it. But we considered all the input from the steering committee.
Yeah. So if I'm a driver and I fill out a discipline form, it's a 3-ply, what am I doing if it's at the end of the day? What's the plan?
Well, the principal designee, whoever he or she is at the bus stop,
Yeah.
will be given that document.
Okay,
And then, depending on when they get it or the infraction, they will then go, if it's an assistant principal, he or she will process the referral, if you
Okay.
will. Then at that time, they will give the discipline, the appropriate discipline for the infraction.
Got it.
And then they will give communication, some kind of communication back to the bus driver. Again, we made a change. We put within 24 hours.
love it. I
But-
read that, that was
but-
awesome.
But then again.
No,
the
no
inf-
but, no
The
but.
infraction depends on the turnaround time.
Yes, and I
Because
saw
depending on
that.
the infraction, there could be
Physical
a lot of
Yeah.
investigations, et cetera, et cetera. So we changed it from 24, one of the recommendations was more time.
Yeah.
So we put 24 to 72 hours.
But if it's
time
physical
frame.
harm, it's within 24
If
hours
it's
or something
physical,
like that.
it's
Yeah.
24 hours.
That's the key. I mean, like, look, we all know that, so one of the issues that we were dealing with is that on the bus driver, I get something that happens, it's physical harm. Now the kid just gets back on, gives me a smirk, and he's just still riding my bus while I'm trying to stew, and he's acting appropriate. So thank you for that. One of the things I was going to mention is that, so I'm a bus driver, I have a referral, kid does something inappropriate, a fight or whatever. At the end of the day, the issue is that I've got to go pick that kid up in the morning, have him get on the bus. I drive the kid to the stop. One of the things that we can do so that and this is just a thought process, I was working with Cheatham about it, is that we could actually have somebody at the district bus stop scan and email those to the teacher or to the principal. That way, when the administrator gets there, they can automatically see it on their email as it's coming in, because sometimes the bus drivers don't make their way back until the next day, and if it's, you know what I mean, that's all. So just if we can get innovative on that piece. The other piece that I would suggest is if we can do a scheduled survey showing hey, how do you feel? Is this, and it gives them an opportunity. If we could do that twice a year, quarterly or something like that, it gives them the opportunity to see trends. Because there's a lot of really good principals that are doing a lot of good things. And then there's some principals that have a lot going on in their building, right? So what we would want to do is be able to pinpoint where some of the issues are and then lend extra support.
Survey to who? Could you
To
clarify
the
that
bus
for me,
drivers.
please?
Yeah, so like an idea like this. So, and this is just suggestions, I'm not speaking for the board right now. But the idea would be that we have some sort of evaluation process over how do they feel, right? Do you feel supported as far as time-wise with the discipline? Give me an example if it's not, something like that. That way we're consistently monitoring and we're not just letting them out into the field, you know what I mean? And not giving them an opportunity to communicate back to us. These are just my suggestions. It doesn't mean that they're worth it. Did you want to, am I rolling?
Yeah, no,
Oh,
that's-
okay,
yeah,
go ahead,
that's
Ms. Wright, go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess one of my biggest questions is where does the $2 million go at the end of the year that's not being spent on transportation?
Go.
Where's that going?
I haven't been to the end of the year in this role yet, so I don't have
Okay.
response.
So,
May I
yeah,
answer that? Yes.
yes.
That goes to the CFO in order to then place into the reserve fund, the fund balance.
So can this board direct differently for that money?
Absolutely,
Is that something that we are
Yeah.
able to do?
absolutely. Once it comes to the budget piece, we can,
Right, but it still has to go through negotiations with 1010.
No.
Right.
If it's pay.
only if it's paid. We control that 2 million, so if we as a school board decide that we don't want it to go back to the general fund just like that, we can steer it however we want, as long as, yeah. no.
I think it is very, very important. I mean, honestly, having toured these bus depots with Dr. Miller, thank you so much for taking me around and showing me the staff there, the mechanics there. I mean, they have been there for years and years and years, and they are bringing, some of them have tens of thousands of dollars of their own tools that they have there that are working on our buses to keep our babies safe when they're transporting them to and from school. So I just really feel, and I've said this from the first time I toured it, we have got to prioritize this and make sure that they understand how much they are valued with our district. And I know the negotiation aspect of it for the pay rates is something that's going to be coming up in the future. But for right now, the immediate time for these bus drivers that are pulling double duty and our mechanics that are pulling double, triple duty, I really feel like it would be a good thing for this board to look at making that a priority on trying to compensate them.
Dr. Schiller, you wanted to say something?
Yes, certainly, the board may earmark that money, and and as we go forward with end-of-the-year fund balances, and to be able to go forward with the collective bargaining money side of the issue, once we know all of our revenues and fixed costs, then this particular group of represented by Local 1010 and all those different workers, from the core people all the way through transportation, then we can, as we're going through, recommend to you how we can appropriately address the salaries in order to, one, for recruitment and retention, so that we have already identified a fund, if that is what the board wishes, plus whatever else may be able to be identified.
What's the tentative timeline on that process that you're talking about?
Well, as the CFO will present tonight in her cameo appearance number 2, is basically the timing, as we pointed out, is that we will not have solidified state funding numbers until early July, once the legislative session. But we'll also at that point understand the fixed costs, the increases, if any, that we'll see from the benefits and for the insurances, and then the board will know after it does, as we're going through program by program with the budget, of what it is, and with your priorities, how that pot of money will be allocated that the board has for next year.
That's for future funds. So the current budget that we have right now with the $2 million that potentially are going to be given back for staff this has already been earmarked for staff that we've not currently hired. That is for our existing budget. Can we not talk about that now instead of waiting until July? I don't want to wait until July for them.
No, none of us want to wait till July. We would recommend that when we come back to you in probably the next board meeting, as we get all of this data together and see where our salaries are, compare it to, is it SCAT, I believe, as well as these other school districts, that we don't do a quick fix solution as much as what we do will then roll into both recognition of where we have been paying these folks this year, as well as prospectively for retention, very important, and recruitment in an attempt for some folks who may have left us for those particular reasons to reconsider joining. And therefore, the point would be, it would then be a sustainable amount on the salaries as opposed to a one-time feel-good quick fix. And that would be, we believe, and if anyone wishes to disagree, the strategy that would be long-term smart and short-term smart, as opposed to doing something that someone may get that went after a paycheck, and after all of that, you prorate that out, it may not be as much as something that would be sustainable over time.
And I hear you, and I guess when we look at this being one or the other, I don't think it should be one or, I think it can be both. Because that money has already been earmarked for transportation. And the other thing that concerns me is I don't want us to do this deep dive, and then all of a sudden what we find out is, oh, we need to offer more, we need to pay more. What tends to happen there is that our seasoned employees that have been with us the longest end up the scale doesn't move with them, if that makes sense. So you'll say, oh, we need to bump our pay rate up significant for our new hires, but we don't equally bump the pay rate up for the people that have been there for that
Yeah.
amount of time. And
No,
we're seeing
not-
that across
yes.
all fronts.
For
So
clarification, I may have not been clear. I've been working with Ms. Varney as well as with our staff. We need to look at the breadth and depth of the compression and all of the grades of the entire pay scale, because we don't want, oh, you just put the money in the upfront to get someone new, and then have the inconsistencies of those people who have been with us and their salary. So that's what I'm saying. A comprehensive solution is, and I'm not talking long-term. This is accelerated. Typically, a consultant will do this, and it'll take about 2 to 3 months in order to bring this together. We're meeting every week, and they have their homework assignments that they go back every day on working. Now, gentlemen, please elaborate on anything here that you'd like to elaborate on, as we've discussed in your own, in order to help clarify. But the board can direct whatever you'd like.
If we can stay on this thread, I have a list, right? So I was going to go through it, but she hit one that's right on my list, so we'll go to it. Schiller's going to get a little upset on this one, but I've been advocating to just take the salaries of the area of the vacant positions and then take them and apply them back to the individuals that are there. For instance, bus drivers, we have the number of stipends that those individuals have gone. Like, we know how many extra rides they've put in. Take the extra salaries, and it may not be as much as people think, but like what you were saying, Ms. Wright, is that right now, we don't need to plan on something that's going to take 6-8 months to implement, and then our finance department, remember, they are so slammed that they can't get out all of the extra stuff. We'd be 8 months down the road and losing our veterans. So my thing was saying, hey, we can still do that. There's only this much money. So whether we take a small amount of it, shoot it in the arm now, and then go back and give the extra salary increases later, I think we should take the extra salaries that are inside of each one of the areas like bus drivers, mechanics. Mechanics, we have 7 out of 12. Take the extra salaries, give them right back to them for doing that on an even spiel. We've never done that before, but we are in a crisis mode. And I'll be honest with you, if we didn't have those mechanics in there, if we didn't have the IAs that we have, if we didn't have the bus drivers, this place would collapse. And we're close. Like, we get reports almost every day about this. We need to take care of the people that are in there, and it's a quick fix, real easy. This is how much is still in there, this is how much we can have, and this is growth. So that was my thought process on that. Did anybody want to talk on that? Anybody?
I do.
Okay. Just that one piece, because there's a lot more here.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm not opposed to doing that, but I think it's important for us to remember and recognize that it's a Band-Aid and it's a one-time payment. And what makes a more significant impact in our hourly workers' lives is for us to actually do the work to give them higher pay, to go towards their retirement. They would rather have a higher hourly rate to rely on steadily throughout the year than a one-time payment. Through the 2 years that I've been here, there has been a downfall of salaries for all the vacant positions that we have across the district. And sometimes that money is used to help increase that hourly pay or salary, whatever we're talking about, whatever department. because we have a crisis in this department like we do other departments, it's not just about the recruiting, it's about the retaining, and we got to kind of address it across the board, because fixing one problem isn't going to help us in the long term with the other. I'm not opposed that if we do send that money straight to people and give them a little, thank you for stepping up and sticking with us and sticking through it. But I think it's important to find out what they actually want. Because so many times we couldn't afford raises, and we did give one-time payments, and they're kind of tired of it. And so I think it's important for us to, instead of just reacting because it seems like the right thing and a feel-good thing, we need to ask them really what they feel like impacts their daily life a little bit more. And it doesn't sound like from Dr. Schiller that this is going to be a long haul of a discovery of how to fix this problem or make it a little bit better. And it doesn't mean that you can't renege on it either and say, forget it, just give the $2 million like we planned on in the first place. But I think it's important for us to ask those workers themselves what would benefit their lives a little bit more. Because again, from past history, I feel like often, typically, 1010 is a little frustrated with just getting a bonus.
So I would say, I agree. Just so everybody understands, when we get our revenues back, there's a reoccurring, which is how much is reoccurring, and then there's the non-reoccurring. So regardless, we never take and create reoccurring raises on non-reoccurring dollars. What you guys we're all talking about is non-reoccurring dollars. So what will happen is we will either give that to them and make the move now, or literally give them the same thing in 3 months, is all I'm saying. So non-reoccurring is the money that is left over from salary lapse and everything else. Reoccurring is the money we get from the governor and some of the other things like the raising of the millage and everything else inside of our taxes. So whether we give it now or we give it later, whether the bus drivers want it a certain way or not, it's literally the only way we can give it. Now, what's happened in the past is that they take these non-reoccurring dollars, have them fall to the bottom line, lump them all together, and then we give them out based on other things. So like bus drivers, IAs, everybody else, teachers, everybody else, and there's this big lump. And then they go in and negotiate, and they say, okay, the teachers get this much non-reoccurring, the bus drivers get this much non-reoccurring. And it's unfair, because sometimes we can't give, and then what it ends up being is just a straight stipend. Here's the difference. The difference is that if we're able to give those stipends as an increase, it's an incentive base, and I'll tell you why. You're not only telling the people that have actually worked and done what they said they would do and come up for us, and are the people that are taking all those runs, you're giving them a back, but you're also, at the same time, telling people who are applying that there's this option, and I'll tell you why. Many people that are dealing with $15, $16, $17 an hour jobs are willing to take a job knowing that there might be opportunity for more money. And this is an opportunity to do that. You see that everywhere with people at McDonald's or wherever. So that was my reasoning behind it is that not only would you be able to tell them, thank you for being there for us, not give the same to this person that did this person. So like this person that doesn't do any extra runs gets the same money as the other person. That's what we've done in the past. Yeah. This does it that way. So that's the reason that I brought it up. But that's not for us to determine. I don't know if we go back into negotiations, but I would like, Dr. Schiller, you said you're going into negotiations with 1010 and the teachers union, correct?
Yes, sir. We are prepared for a meeting with the board in order to gather the board input on the contract, but it would be non-monetary because, again, what my pledge to I'm not going to be here when the money comes in, but what I can do is resolve with BFT and with Local 1010 are any and all language issues that we can get to the point that are not necessarily monetarily related. For example, one might be trying to correct the inconsistencies in the salary guides of steps, and when someone is, for example, at step 9 and they go to an upper pay, a new job, going back to, and lose $2.40 an hour, you know, I've been working with in that respect. I mean, we can correct a lot of the issues that may be contributing to our problem, but I am not in a position, because that'll be coming a little bit later when the funds become available, of then to apply the salary. I won't be here. And so bottom line is it comes down to, that would be a welcome gift for your permanent superintendent to do.
Well, I think just so the new board understands, the way it works is the legislature will send X amount of dollars. That will happen by the end of May. So we'll know the reoccurring dollars somewhere in there, right? Then they evaluate, they do stuff. But literally, the non-reoccurring dollars we can take care of right now. So, and there's no question that we, you know, and I'll just be honest, I feel very strongly about this, so, I'm sorry, go ahead. Ms. Campbell.
The non-recurring dollars, if you- I know you.
Yeah, go ahead. Stuck
This
on this.
may
I
be
still got
more
more.
of a-
I still got more. I'm just-
Oh, help us.
Ms. Campbell.
Sorry. So this may be more of a Cindy Lisinski question, but if, you know, priority number one is recruitment and retention of drivers in this area. But is there a possibility that we could use, and I don't see Cindy, that we can use some of these dollars that drop to the bottom to help with our white fleet? I know we can't use capital dollars for operating, but I think we can use operating for capital. If there's a way to at least designate a chunk of it to improve the white fleet, because honestly, that seems like that would improve life for some of our technicians, because they're working on not vehicles that are requiring heavy maintenance, they're just doing the very simple updating. So it seems like we could kill two birds with one stone by using some of that funding to make a dent in our white fleet problem, and that makes conditions better for our maintenance staff. Just throwing that out there. And like I said, I think I say ask Cindy, but I know that we can move funds from operating to capital expenditures, right?
Yes. So you're saying that people, the vacant salaries, you may want to take a portion of that to offset the cost of the white fleet?
I'm offering that as an
Okay.
opportunity, because we've got to find that from somewhere. And white fleet dollars usually we designate that out of capital, but a lot of times those are the ones that get cut. We need a new box truck. Nope, not getting a new box truck this year because it fell down to the bottom of the list and we didn't have enough. Or we've got to replace emergency, a building caught on fire at one of our schools, and so now we have to designate capital to that. But if we have some designated, I don't know, 500,000, I don't know, some would be, depending on the size of the truck. 500,000 would buy a lot of minivans. It wouldn't buy a lot of, well, it might buy 10 minivans. I'll take that back. But you know what I mean? We could maybe do something towards that with what falls to the bottom. And I'd leave that up to staff to
Almost,
to work that out, but it's an option.
Right.
Could ask the bus drivers, would you guys rather receive money for the stipends or go to new vehicles? And see how that turns out for us. But let me
Both
ask.
and, Mr. Susan, both and.
You're the one that wanted to go to them.
Both and,
But,
not either or.
anyways, yeah, no, I have, with that regard, I will plan on, when we go to those negotiations, bringing forward short-term or non-reoccurring dollars to the table so that we can do that, just so you guys know. And then right now is not the time. We're bringing it up as a topic, but when we get in there. All right, so let's keep going down my list.
I have a clarifying question before we move away from those dollars.
Okay, perfect.
The $2 billion, is that strictly from staff vacancies?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So on that note, as far as the white fleet, we used to, and I have it down here as one of the topics, we used to say we were going to go out and rent our white fleet from Enterprise, or there was an idea that we might actually, now I know that the box trucks and some of that stuff, we don't want to do that too. But if you guys remember, there were some vehicles we were using. Is
There
that
were 40 pickup trucks.
40 pickup trucks? Is that something that we still want to do, or do we? We're looking at that. Okay.
Yeah, we're looking at the.
Because we already had a contract with
Yeah,
Enterprise.
we're looking at the advantages of costs,
Okay.
of benefits of leasing versus purchase.
Yeah.
That'd be, see, is it altogether
We already-
interrelated issue that one thing will impact something else, as what Ms. Campbell had suggested. So we're trying to look for a comprehensive solution and bring back to you in a matter of weeks.
I just know we already had one, so if you guys are doing it, you might be able to get the numbers off that. The other thing is that we used to allow coaches to get their CDLs to drive the buses to the away games and stuff like that. It saved money.
We plan on holding a class this summer for any of our employees that are interested in getting their CDL.
Love it. That's a huge opportunity, because then I know that you have some bus drivers that really like that overtime.
Right.
And they get into scraps over it, literally. But the thing is that it's an opportunity for the school to save some money if the bus driver is the coach and he can drive it. so.
We put a survey out there last year, and we had several people that were interested in getting their CDLs. Coaches, media specialists were interested.
Yeah, because they can take them, yeah, it's a different thing.
Because I told them I had
think
a bus driver shortage. I don't have a bus shortage. I have a bus driver shortage.
All right, did that,
Can I ask a question?
yeah,
So
go.
back in the day, when I was teaching choir, the school district where I taught in Texas had, didn't have to have a CDL, but they had some larger vehicles that we could use to transport small groups. Do we have that so that, like, let's say a choir teacher wants to take a,
We
10
have
or fewer?
we have a couple of vans in the district we can do that with. We have to be very careful, certain wheelbase and rollover. There's a very specific instructions from the state that we have to follow in order to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick clarifying question. It was said in a meeting that I recently had that we have students that attend the North Area ALC/C/ stuff coming out of Palm Bay. Do we drive those individuals in big buses all the way up, or it was like Fieldston and stuff like that?
Those students are going to Gardendale this year,
Good.
and we are transporting students from MECO, from MIND to MECO to.
Are they on a pickup list, or is it just one bus going all the way up?
We have, if I'm correct, I think we have about 12 buses that are just designated for Gardendale. So they only pick up Gardendale students.
That came across, and I was like, wow, maybe there's something we can do with a South area opportunity or something like that. All right. Okay, we've got another problem. These parents seem to think, and I'll say it publicly, that they can get on our buses. And it seems to think that some of our law enforcement officers don't think that they need to arrest them and put them into trespassing. And we have a couple of videos that we've watched where the parents get on, clear the entire bus and say, get off, get off. And the kid's like, I don't want to get off. I don't even know my parents' phone number and I don't live here. So we need to be able to, that's the one that I asked you guys to take a look at. Here's the deal. The deal is that we need to get an emergency thing out to our law enforcement that says that if there's a parent on our bus that decides to get on there and act inappropriately, or starts coming up and influencing the security of our bus, those people need to be arrested and trespassed, period. Period. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it's causing disruption with our bus drivers, and the bus drivers, they don't know. So like they open the door, hey, what's going on? They open the door, parent comes on, starts the conflict with one of the other students. I'm sorry, you cannot access our bus. Like, you can stand out there and try to do it, but it's a huge, huge thing, and it's happened like 3 times in the last month. So have we got anything wrapped around that? Is that a concern? What's going on there?
It is a concern.
So here's what it is. The bus drivers are trying to say this person needs to be arrested, but sometimes they don't know, the law enforcement doesn't. What do we do? What do we do to make that happen? Is that Officer Neal sending something out? Do you guys agree with trying to get these people off our buses?
Definitely.
Okay.
It's a safety issue for the driver and the students.
It is, and I can see both sides of that, and I'm just saying, if my child texted me from a bus and said something was happening, I need you, get here, you bet I would be there, and I'd probably be one of those parents, so I can understand the frantic emergency that would cause a parent to board a bus. But I think what we have to do is we need to message to our parents, hey, these procedures are in place for a reason, this is why. We cannot have you getting on a bus
Right,
and
God
clearing a
forbid
bus
somebody
and
gets
putting
on it,
kids
yeah.
potentially in more danger in traffic. So I understand both sides of it. I think if we sent something that said that this is the rule for our bus
Right,
riders,
no, I agree.
then at least they might know a little bit more. Because honestly, if you're a parent and you get a text from your child and says, there's an emergency, I need
Oh, I know.
you know any parent is going to run right there and probably do the same thing.
And in many of those cases, the buses, the students were not in any kind of danger. The issue is the parents were like, I saw one where the parents were leveraging a parent into the back of it was crazy.
I saw one that wasn't even a parent that got on a bus. So yeah, there's
Well, yeah,
some
this
issues
one
there.
wasn't either.
Yeah.
There's one that was. So, Dr. Miller, can you put together a formal communications for Russell Brown to send out to our parents, and then also work with Mr. Neal
Yes.
on securing the fact that these law enforcement agencies should know that they have to arrest parents who access
Yes,
our buses?
I will get with Officer Neal.
That's good.
Can I ask one question?
Go.
Dr.
Yeah,
Miller?
yeah, yeah.
Dr. Miller and Jefferson, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you guys taking the time that you have with me personally, touring the bus depots and talking to the bus drivers and our mechanics. And I just want to hear from you at this point. What do you think our bus drivers and our mechanics would appreciate right now with the situation that we're currently in?
I think they would like to see their salaries raised.
Okay,
It helps with their retirement.
okay.
And that's one of the benefits of working in these positions, it's not that you're going to make a lot of money, but you're going to have a retirement when you retire. And if we could raise those salaries, that would help with their retirement.
Okay.
And to add to that, I talked one supervisor for fleet and another technician from leaving our district to go to another district, and that was last week. And we will be losing another tech as of March 3rd.
We received that word as we were sitting in the
We
back,
just learned.
that we have another technician leaving.
So,
Because of salary, can I ask why?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, salary.
Okay.
Are people, I know the millage is in the future and people have to eat now and they have to buy eggs now. But is the millage making a difference at all? Are they looking into what difference it's going to make for them next year?
we don't have
Well,
that.
They're not looking that far ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
They're living day to day.
yeah, no, I understand. I'm just wondering how much of that is, because we do have especially with 10 employees, because they're not as engaged in the process in general, sometimes it's not, just the awareness of what's out there. Here's what's coming, and yes, it's next year, but I'm wondering how much is that even that awareness is there, that especially for our veterans, there's for the ones who've been with us for 17, 18 years, I can't remember what the cutoff is, it's like $4,400 extra a year. That's a significant impact to people who will stick around through next school year. But I'm wondering how much awareness is there. Is there anything that we can do that communicates best? And not saying we don't do something now, but I'm saying even for the future, that's
No,
going
I
to be
agree with
a huge deal next year. How can we communicate that best to them? Because they're not doing jobs that they need to check their email every day. But what's the best way to get that message out there to that group of employees?
Yeah, can I jump on that? Because I feel like, I don't remember when we had this conversation, but we did talk about this as a board for messaging the communication about the millage to all of our staff members, because we already had a conversation about how it was going to be spent. But I truly don't believe most of our staff really knows how it might impact them and when it's going to impact them. I thought that was the most important piece too, because a lot of people had this misconception that it was going to happen right away. And when you're already frustrated and tired and overworked and you're ready to leave already, when you find out it's not happening tomorrow when you thought it was, that's gonna make you a little bit more frustrated, right? And so I think it's really important, and I felt like we gave that directive, but maybe we didn't, for us to do that across the board, because we do know the answer. And so I think we need to look into re-communicating that to our staff members. Again, you're right, it's not gonna fix the problem now, but for those who are kind of teetering on the line or just need a little something to help them hang on, it'll help.
I have a question. Are we to survey the bus drivers and ask them if they prefer a bonus or a pay increase?
No, because we can't, so here's what it is. There's non-reoccurring dollars and
I
there's
get-
reoccurring, right? So we
I
can't
get
say one or the other because we can't take one to the other.
Okay,
So I would say,
because I heard someone say that up.
yeah,
at the
I think
diocese. just wanna
the, I
get some
think the
clarity.
argument would be, or the question would be, would you like us to negotiate the bonus and the argument is would you like us to do a bonus now that is more, or at the end of the year, once they're all in? Because the other problem we have is we can't do it right now because we don't know what bus drivers are going to need and what the bottom line is going to be. But once the last day's there, bam, if you have worked these days, it's also a retention thing that we will pay you based on how many runs you had because of this is our pot, $100,000, $200,000. We know how much it is, and we will pay you in a month, 2 months. Well, that means that they'll stick around, they won't jump over the summer, and they'll be able to understand that we're going to take care of them at the back, but you can message that now, that's all. So a survey would say, would you like an incentive-based stipend or a flat stipend at the end of the year with non-reoccurring dollars? And then, of course, we will be working to get reoccurring dollars. That's what my suggestion would be. Does that make sense? Okay, I was getting back to my list. We still good? All right, the other thing is that, can people work half-days?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, and then we got the CDL, and then we got the ALCs. I think I got my list taken care of. Yep, that's it.
We've talked about mixed positions before. I know we have very few
Yep.
in the district. But what positions
That's a great idea.
do we have where people can do more than one thing? I mean, because obviously before and after care, that doesn't work for a bus driver because, it's at the same time. Cafeteria staff, there's a potential, as long as they don't do breakfast, but we have more lunch to, do we recruit to those people?
Mr. Thornton and I have discussed that,
Okay.
coming up with a position where they could drive the bus and work in the cafeteria.
Right. Listen, I've worked in, it's not ideal, but I've worked in a state where teachers, a friend of mine is band director in Oklahoma for years and years and years, and he drove a bus, dropped his kids off, parked the bus, went and taught band all day. It was a long day. And then drove kids home. It's not ideal. I don't know if in the state of Florida if we can do that, or if anybody would even be interested.
And teachers teach 7 out of 7 classes. When I was a teacher, you know what I mean? I mean, look, if you might find somebody that says, I mean, I taught classes, then I went right out to the lacrosse field or the football field, coached, and then I literally drove to the night school. So
Is it
like,
even
there
a
are people out there
possibility?
that'll do
Is
that.
it even a possibility in the state of Florida for teachers to
Yeah, it would,
To drive a bus?
drive a bus?
yeah.
Oh, 2 full-time? Yeah.
It's not full-time, it'd just be a stipend.
And that would be an interesting contract between the VFT contract and the 1010 contract. You need to be working under both.
I say we
Yeah,
just do it.
so I was gonna, I mean, someone can correct me if I'm wrong here, but just from my own experience, my dad worked as nighttime security for adult ed, but he wasn't allowed to take a part-time job somewhere else because of the potential of like overtime and stuff. There's weird conflicts there. So if you're a full-time teacher, I have a feeling there's gonna be a weird conflict.
We can look at it. We're allowed to take other jobs, so. All right, we all good? I think we had a bunch of
I
them.
think this was I feel like this was an update, and you guys are on it, and I appreciate it. I think you've gotten some ideas from the board of,
Yes.
what we're looking. I don't think we necessarily have to give them,
Well,
go therefore and do it. Just go
survey.
therefore and keep going.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Survey,
We thank you, and let me tell you, this group is, and the folks who are not here today, and our project manager who's sitting back there, they are bringing together this thing, and we'll have it done for you right quick, where it's going to be interrelated. I won't tell you what we charge for this special consulting experience. Okay.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to move into these next 3 things. They're just requests that I put down. I needed to get board majority to have staff work on it, bring it back for larger discussion.
Okay.
And then the other thing that we have is we moved the 000s off, if you guys look at it. But then there's Dr. Schiller's student conduct and safety and security, which is a big, big opportunity. I was wondering if we could get through these 3, break, and then move the student safety to tonight, right? Is that okay?
I
That
don't
way
know.
you guys have your mental and food.
Yeah,
and, you know what I mean? Like, it's been a pretty
Out
tough
of what's
winter.
left, student conduct safety is the most important, I feel like,
Yeah,
and
we might have a
urgent.
long
So, I mean, I don't know if we need to do it tonight. I mean, Dr. Schiller, do you have a preference do we go ahead and do it now, between now and 4:30, or?
We have about 5 minutes worth of real quicks, and then
I could give you an overview of where it is so that you know where we go with it, or where you go with it.
I don't think the 5 minutes of real quicks is going to be 5 minutes, just FYI.
I don't think that we can get through this in 30 minutes, and I think
Okay.
we'll be getting into our hour. I think we move it tonight to do a really good job.
That's
That
your,
was mine.
that's your
Okay.
preference.
That's fine.
All right. So just so you guys know, next topic's the parental involvement in schools. The item up for discussion is related to barriers in which eating with students and lunch and there are others that are implemented during COVID actually were implemented and are still around, okay? So like this one, along with the COVID policies, are kind of the same thing, but I kind of segmented them because I wanted to discuss them 2 separate. The idea over the next 3 items is just getting board majority that we would like staff to bring us something back and then discuss it on the 7th. But here's what it is. Right now, if you try to go to eat lunch with your kid at school, there's a host and a variety of barriers that are inside there. There's other barriers that are between volunteering and everything else that weren't there prior to COVID. So my idea was just to ask staff to go identify those barriers, bring them back so that we can then take a look at it as a board and then decide what we want to do, whether we want to keep the parental non-lunch and all that stuff. So if I can just get a majority to move forward with it, discussion would be at the next meeting, but just hearing what they are and deciding on them is what I was looking to do today. That's the action item. Mr.
So
Dr. Schiller.
clarification, please. As I understand what you're saying is that should the board wish to go in the direction as you're recommending,
That's it.
that we would, as staff, identify the barriers so that, and bring it back to the board for discussion at the 7th.
Because I think there's going to be some that we don't even know about, that I don't know about, and it's not appropriate for me to say we shouldn't do
Okay.
this, or this. It should.
Thank you for clarification.
Yep. Does everybody wish to talk about it, or is there a board
Yes.
majority? Ms. Jenkins?
Yeah, just point of clarification. I'm fine with them going through and finding barriers and identifying them for us, but this wasn't because of COVID. This was because of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. What happened was when COVID came and it naturally shut down the process, we identified schools that weren't necessarily following the process after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. And so there was a miscommunication in communities where parents felt like, all of a sudden you're shutting me out because of COVID, but reality was, well, they're kind of bending and breaking the rules a little bit, letting parents onto their small community campuses when they shouldn't have been. So I don't think there's anything wrong with us identifying these barriers so we can make sure that all of our schools are following that same process. But when we rolled back from COVID, that's when some of our schools realized they weren't necessarily doing the right thing in the first place.
Okay, we're good? Everybody move forward, bring it
Thank you.
back, okay? And then next topic is COVID policies, kind of the same thing. Dr. Schiller has inside of your board documents some items that he had identified that are kind of lingering out. The idea is, hey, Dr. Schiller, can you and staff identify any kind of COVID-related items, bring them back for either approval or discontinuance? Is that good for everybody? We're good?
Yeah.
All right. And
To
yes, ma'am.
include the, I mentioned last time to include the facial covering policy.
Yeah, there's those, and then there's just a lot of them, right? Like there's stuff that's just still lingering around through policies, procedures. We just need to kind of take a look at it. That's all.
The 7th?
Yes, sir. And then the next topic is ESF sub-volunteer in schools. What I had mentioned is I would like to try to get a system. Many people currently go and volunteer their time at the school district. We have a lot of directors that are doing those, but one of the issues that we have is that, and we have resource teachers that go in and they work with some of the teachers. With that said, there is something about going in and taking a day and saying, I am here to the majority of the other individuals that are in here. Secretaries, individuals, plus we have a very big drop inside of our schools. For instance, many of our substitutes in Title I's, many of our volunteers in Title I's don't exist. You may already know that our PTOs in our Title I schools are usually the teacher because they don't have parents, right? The volunteers that are inside of our schools are, there's in some of our Title I's, they're just not there. Now there are good cases, but in some others and non-Title I's are the same way. So the idea is twofold. We get people to start being a part of a school once, possibly twice a year, and then we also connect the workforce into the school. We help out a little bit, and then also we kind of start tying a connection that I think sometimes is lost. So my thought process was, because I don't know what that looks like. Like I'm like, hey, I'd like to try to do this and then have some sort of a form that they fill out so that we can talk about good stuff. But I don't know the specifics. I know Ms. Campbell has a very strong opinion about it, but I thought today just let's identify what it looks like and then come back. And then I had something else, Dr. Schiller.
Mr. Susan, I've asked staff, and they have gathered a preliminary list of hours and the number of people who are here in these areas. And it's a remarkable number of hours and days that they're either volunteering or already substituting and not part of their job description. If I may, I know time is short, if we can send that to you perhaps tomorrow so that you have a frame of reference of the data. But I was very impressed at that point.
I tell you, hats off to all the individuals that do. It's pretty amazing. I think that those would be the people that would not even have to fill out a form. They'd already have the form filled out. It's more about the other individuals and giving them an opportunity, but I think we do need to honor them. I think the other thing, Dr. Schiller, that we would like is you know, just sort of a all hands on deck here with the last couple of years, right? Or last couple of months. So what we have is the need in our schools for retention, recruitment, volunteers, academics, all of that. So what I would like to do is give you the opportunity to evaluate possibly looking at sending some of our staff that are currently in our headquarter buildings into the schools to cover some of the vacancies for substitutes, if that's okay. What are
May I
your
jump
thoughts?
in? We're already doing that. We already have been doing that. We had some staff members at the district who went and helped out for months at certain schools where there are major vacancies. I have a strong opinion about this too. I think it is just another moment in which we kind of degrade the profession of educators when we just assume someone can jump in and do their job. There are plenty of people up at this district that love what they do, and they love that they do it for kids, but they don't want to work with kids, or they aren't qualified to work with kids, and that's okay that they acknowledge that. We can't force people to go support those schools if they're not prepared to do it. But I think you need to take a minute to look over how the staff at district has already been supporting our schools, because it is beyond impressive by how much they've been doing.
Thank you. I'm not taking away the work. I'm not saying that they should have to be substitutes. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm going to bring back my illustration. I hope you looked it up last time about the carrot and the stick, right? There is, that I talked about last time. Am I making people hungry? Sorry. There's a carrot way and a stick way, and I think we need to be very careful in how we do this, because what I don't think you're intending to say is that we're now going to put a mandate on all the staff who work in this building, because that's very much a stick that we're going to beat people with. Who I asked, Dr. Green asked for if we could get some, data on how many vacancies are in this building. This building where we have people who, yes, are who are former, classroom teachers who are now instructional coaches and support in that way, or they're curriculum experts, all the different titles that they have, and directors and assistant directors and all of that. But we also have people who are scheduling maintenance, and they're running payroll, and they would have, going into our schools, even to just sub one day, they would not have as much training as we give our subs. We give our subs, and it may not be the most exciting thing, but before someone goes into sub in our school, unless they have an education degree, they have to do, I can't remember how many hours, but they have several, hours of online video training that they have to go through. We're talking about putting people in a classroom who did not take this job to work with kids. Some people, some of them yes, some of them didn't. They got it, they're excellent accountants, they're excellent maintenance people, but we're saying that if they're working in this building, they have to work in a school. The carrot way, I understand the connection, and I believe the connection can be important, but the carrot way of doing this would be, offering an incentive. Hey, we want you to have the opportunity. You even said, Mr. Stutzel, a while ago, giving them the opportunity. I like that phrase, giving them opportunity, so that once a year, potentially twice, if you want to go and make that personal connection with a school, maybe a school close by, that we give them, to fill in as a sub, or to go jump in the cafeteria for a day, or whatever, do morning duty, afternoon duty. We can find a way of doing incentives. If it's subbing, we're saving money. If we have somebody from a peer going in and subbing, we could give them a $50 one-time bonus of some kind, just throwing ideas out there. And we still are saving money, but there's some kind of incentive to do that, as well as the connection. I am going to continue to feel very strongly about issuing a mandate because of all those reasons. But there's another reason I just wanted us focus, and it's, although I understand why we're moving the 000s to a later date, and I definitely agree with that, but there was one policy that, as we're going through, just helped focus me back on that, and that is 0123. And it says in there, focus the board action on policy making, goal setting, planning, and evaluation, and insist on regular and partial evaluation of staff. But that, when we start talking about what we're talking about right now, we are talking about operations. We're talking about the job of the CEO. And I understand that there are some times when the board may want to step in and give direction, very specific direction to the CEO. But those cases, we better have a really good reason before we take those reins from the CEO of this district onto the board to tell him how to do the job of filling those holes. especially if it's going to impact a lot of people. And I'm just also just going to guess, and I may be wrong. I'm going to guess that because some of the people in this building are part of different bargaining units, some part of BFT and some part of 1010, that part of that may have to come to negotiations. We may have to come to negotiations before we can tell people who work in this building, oh, and you have to work 1 or 2 days a year subbing in a school. So that again is a stick. And we talk about morale. Morale is low, and making people do things that they didn't sign up for. Whatever good reasons we may have, that is morale busting right there. And I'm not willing to step into another morale busting situation. So I think we need to tread very lightly and be very careful. But creating an opportunity, sure. Creating even an incentive, love that. Letting people at this building have the opportunity to step into our schools and love on our kids and remind them of why we're doing what we're doing, love that. Mandating, no, never. So if it wasn't clear before, hopefully I'm clear now.
I would like to respond to some of them. It's an absolutely that it could be a policy. We have policy making. We could put it into policy and we could say, here's what we would like. Because maybe I said it wrong and I keep trying to say it. It's not all substituting. So if you have somebody that's running payroll, they work alongside the accountant at the school. If you have somebody that's in ESE, then they work along the side of the BLAST program. They get their firsthand account of what's happening inside of the schools. That's my point. I apologize about it sounding. One of the things that you have, and one of the leadership qualities that I've had, even as a boss of other individuals, and I've always loved in leadership, is somebody that gets in and understands the workflow of the people that they represent. And this gives them that opportunity, that if there's an individual that's working out there in the district, that they're not just somebody that shows up and talks to 80 of them, but actually once a year sits with them and walks through the process. I think that is there. I can understand the policy, the morale being low. This isn't about that. This is about having them understand the boots on the ground. Many times we do things from this district and other places around the county, and there's one of the biggest things is if they only understood what I do on a regular basis, they would not be passing this. So I think it's an inhibitor as far as, or it helps them understand what the people that they're affecting with their jobs. And I would consider us, we've gone and subbed and stuff like that. But I wanted to say, I didn't want everybody to think this is about substituting. This is more about working with the people that you serve or you work for, because I feel sometimes the roles get reversed, right? Sometimes the district or whoever it is gets blamed that they're not representing the people, and we should be serving them. Dr. Blackburn, one of his greatest statements he ever said was, we are here to serve the teachers, serve the bus drivers, serve them, and this is an opportunity to do so. So I wanted to say that. And I think bargaining units, that's why I was saying, like, there's no way that I can say, here's what we need to do. It's just said, hey, conceptually, go see it. You have a lot of people that are already doing it. Let's offer it to the other people. Let's see what it looks like. Bring it back. That's it. Sound good?
I have one more thing.
Is there anybody that opposes this, doing this?
I have one more thing to say. So
Yes, Ms. Jenkins.
I would say lead by example. I don't want to how many times I've supported a classroom and substituted in a classroom just this year alone. So I think for us up here to make these statements, when some of us may not have necessarily done that, lead by example first.
Sure.
And this would have to be negotiated. But if somehow we wanted to offer where you get a paid day off to leave this building and go support our school voluntarily, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It creates a sense of community. But from day one, the conversation was about mandating and requiring our staff. So let's be clear about that. I've had that conversation as well in the past about even like our teachers and our support staff, allowing, again, it has to get negotiated, but having a conversation about possibly allowing them one free day to go to their kids' school and participate in an event or something, creating that culture and sense of community and supporting each other. But I think I've made it clear. I stand with Ms. Campbell on this one.
Okay, so we're all good with Dr. Schiller bringing it back as an idea?
Well, if I can speak on this a little bit, is more than just substituting. I think we could give Dr. Schiller direction. it might even be in policy to look at the staff at the central office to see if we have anybody that's certified as maybe as a resource teacher or content specialist. And if we have vacancies in the schools, can he not reassign those individuals for a classroom?
We're already doing that.
It was already, that is what you're looking at. It was already done. Those 58 days are people who, we didn't have an elementary social studies content specialist for the first part of the year because that person went to Saturn and taught a third grade class for months and is just now back. So all the work that his content specialist was supposed to do, it wasn't being done because she was teaching in a classroom. And she wasn't the only one. You can see the months, from 58 days up to 5 months on that
Correct.
list.
Are we still, I mean, do
But
we
I
still have
think
openings?
your point
Yeah.
is that we still have those individuals, we still have openings at the schools,
Correct.
is what you're saying. And we have stellar examples of individuals who are volunteering.
Yeah.
There may be an opportunity for others to do the same, or go to work there, or be reassigned. Look, whatever, yeah. That's what you're asking.
Exactly, that's exactly, it should be, we should, obviously with his experience and the experienced individuals that he has around them, not us, but them, we should give them the direction to reassign if need be with discussion. Obviously in their content, I'm not saying take a bookkeeper here and have them teach accounting or substitute a class. We don't need, it's not that we don't need substitutes. I'm more interested in putting teachers back in those classrooms. That's what our students need. So if that's, and it's not up to us right now, it should be
Right.
Dr. Schiller and his expertise to look at top to bottom to see if he can help our students in this and do it immediately. I think it's something that could be quickly done. I don't know, we could talk to Dr. Schiller about that, or we can.
I think the idea that I had was to help out the schools and say, hey, here's the things that we can do to help out, and do it in a way that it is collaborative and stuff like that, so it's not a stick. What I'm hearing you say is that you wanted to try to move forward with an idea that in the event the last couple of months or even whatever that is, because my concern is we need to start filling the holes to finish out the year. And so I'm all about looking at those opportunities. We already have staff doing that. That's not an issue. I think I'm okay with that.
I don't disagree. I mean, honestly, everything that we do needs to be focused around children, right? We're in the business of children, educating children. And so I don't think that there's an issue with creating an opportunity for anyone that's sitting here to be able to go and work in a school. I can't see the disadvantage of that.
An opportunity is different from what we originally had talked about, an opportunity versus we're saying everybody has to do it.
There's two separate things.
That is very, very different. Creating an opportunity, having some release time, for people to do that, yeah, no, it's great. And like I said, I'm even interested in looking at incentives for people to do things like that. I don't know how you do that outside of subbing because it's not necessarily going to be a cost savings, but we, create those opportunities, create opportunities for staff to be from here to be released to go mentor a kid in a school. I'm interested in that. But I want to go back to a point that Mr. Trent made a little while ago. I think it would probably be good if for any of us who aren't aware to go and sit down, you could meet with either of the leading and learning assistant superintendents and find out what everybody does. Because there is a misconception, I've heard it, the cubicle farm and all that stuff, but some of these people who are content specialists and these resource teachers, we've got a boatload. We have a boatload of vacancies, but we also have a boatload of brand spanking new teachers. And the content specialists and the resource teachers are the ones primarily who are going out and support. They're supporting all. So if you're the science resource teacher, you're supporting all of the elementary science or the secondary science, you're supporting them, but you're particularly supporting the brand new ones who need that more hands-on. And we, in addition to needing, teachers in classrooms, we also need support for the brand new teachers in the classrooms who in those content areas. So it would be really good before we start talking about, because it just sounds, and this may not have been your intent at all, but it kind of came across as, we've got people up here who we don't really need up here, so let's put them back in the classroom because the jobs they're doing up here is not important. And I don't think that's what you meant, but it absolutely is how it came across. So let's just be careful. But it would be really good. I think it would be good to take a walk through the departments and find out, well, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Not in a scary way, and we need to be careful. When we walk through this building, we can be scary. Not because of the way we look, but because of our positions. But it would be a good idea to find out What, I see people laughing. What do people do in this building? Because the perception out there is there's way too many people in this building, but do we even know what they do? Have we been in the print shop? Have we been through payroll? Do we know how many people we have doing each job? It would be really good for us to know that before we start suggesting that maybe we don't need all of them. Because we're pretty, if you compare us to other districts, we can be pretty trimmed.
I think I think you bring up a good point, that we should look at that, at the organizational flow of how things are working, or, because you are right, the conception in the community is we're top-heavy. I have heard it over and over and over again. And so is that something that Dr. Schiller could look at on how our structure is set up right now with our people at the district? And can we talk with those departments?
I don't think that's what Ms. Campbell is saying at all.
Well, but honestly, his expertise I would rely on, because he's been in a lot of districts to know, and we've already had the conversation about what our directors do and what other districts, and what we, just to follow up.
Right.
What, you know, he was talking about how in other districts, they're looking at like 17 to 1 or whatever. But the thing is, that's all they're doing.
Right.
They're all
And so
they're
that's what-
doing.
so-
And our directors may only have 9 schools, but they're also doing major departments. Right. So, you know, I mean, he has a level of expertise, and maybe his level of expertise can help us to say, hey, you know what, actually,
Would you be in
Brevard's-
favor of him looking at that then?
Brevard's
I mean,
pretty
I am.
lean.
I think that we should use his expertise while he's here and his knowledge.
I think looking at it, making recommendation, moving into that direction as far as twofold. One, what is the organization of what we have here at the headquarters? And then two, if we can have a school-focused agenda to where if there's individuals that can put an all hands on deck in the next couple of months and attend maybe some of the schools to support like they have been, make those recommendations. That's all. Absolutely.
Okay, I need to jump in here. We Beyond took a train off a track. What Ms. Campbell said was, I suggest you walk through this building and learn what the people here do. That's what she said. We hired an interim superintendent to do the job of an interim superintendent. We didn't hire him to do a consultation of the organizational structure of this organization. In just a couple of months, we're going to have a full-time superintendent who can very well come in here and do whatever he wants to the organizational structure itself. I think the important part of this conversation is, as Ms. Campbell said, it was presented and stated multiple times as a mandate, and clearly that's not where it is anymore. So the important part is that looking at options for this to be voluntary. What's best for our kids is to not just throw people in front of our kids to fill a spot. So just because somebody is a certified teacher that now works up at the district doesn't mean they're the best person to go back into a classroom and stand in front of kids. It's not what's best for our kids. So put the train back on the tracks.
Mr. Chairman, can I just finish up?
Yeah.
Because I was
Yeah,
the
you're right.
responsible one for
So
that.
sorry. So sorry. Go
Was
ahead.
but if we are to look at someone to replace the substitutes that are in those classrooms on a daily basis, it would be a certified teacher that is already in our district. And I would err on the side of that professional teacher to be in that classroom rather than a substitute. So all we were asking is for our interim superintendent and his years of experience to possibly now look at, you know, our organization. It was brought up to see if we can run this more efficiently and effectively while you're here for the new person, he or she, that's going to be coming in. There's nothing out of the ordinary that a superintendent in your position would be doing. So I mean, we also need to look at, you know, the evaluation system of our, you know, how is that going to work with our directors and our staff? Are we just going to ask our new person that's coming in to start doing evaluations, you know, or recommendations for assignment for the next year? Or do we ask or give direction to our superintendent to start working on that now? So maybe we can have some recommendations for appointment by the time his contract is done here. I would like to, maybe if this is the time, let's have him working on that.
Probably not the time right now, because we've got 5 minutes.
I mean, my thing is that our staff needs evaluations, right? They need them. Like, and a superintendent who comes in and has not spent the time here wouldn't be able to do them, so somebody needs to be able to do those. So I don't have a problem with allowing Dr. Schiller to move forward with evaluations of staff.
When is that done typically? typically? Like, I don't know.
It's done about now to the end of the year, and you don't really, right, because the reappointment happens like in May for a July one. I don't think that there's any question about like the reappointment process. I think what it is that there just needs to be some evaluations done. You know what I mean? Go ahead,
Well,
sir.
a new superintendent's not going to have
Right.
anything to.
Well, he'll be able to review the evaluations is what it is. Go ahead.
Again, please review the memo that we sent out that detailed the protocols and the timelines that have been established in this district that are aligned with state statutes. And what I had asked is the clarity. If you wish for me, since I've been here, to continue that process and be responsible for those evaluations, so that is completed as it has been in the past, using the state and the local protocols and whatever. But what I'd asked was the clarity. I see that as part of my job if so directed. If you prefer the new person to come in, you're not going to hit the timelines for a brand new person walking in here that the state has prescribed for final decisions to be made about reappointments. And I'm just seeking, as I did in that memo, the clarity. Because it's coincident that the deadline that this district has used on that timeline is that in order to get all the reappointment letters completed, get all the evaluations done, all the notifications, whatever, that May 9th is coincident with the date of the appointment of your permanent superintendent.
Really?
Okay? And what I'm saying is for the goodness of our staff,
I didn't know that.
for what we need to do is that we must do the evaluation as our principals must evaluate the teachers, and it goes right down the line.
Right.
Okay? And that our cabinet evaluate their directors, then it's left to your interim superintendent to evaluate the cabinet members. And I just want to make sure the board understands that there is a process, there is statutory language, and I need that direction, and the staff needs that clarity. Then the board will need to decide, is it that I, sitting here for a period of months, then have the obligation burden that the board wants to make the recommendations to the board for reappointments in the areas of all staff virtually, based on the evaluation processes, okay, which would happen according to our protocols and timelines that have been long established on May 9th, or do you wish to defer that to, in the assumption that you appoint someone and that person becomes operational in time to do it, and the furthest date out that has to be done is by the end of June. And so it's just a matter of your timing and to whom you wish to default the responsibility.
Yeah.
I think doing the evaluations, I think reappointments based on the evaluations can be done by the interim or the new superintendent. Like, I don't have a problem with that. Yeah.
The interim or the new? You
The
said
new, the new superintendent. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like,
Well, wouldn't that be recommendation
it'd
anyway?
be like a recommendation.
From
but,
Dr.
like,
Schiller.
not- I don't think assigning a reappointment or not wouldn't be something that Dr. Schiller, he should make the recommendations based on the evaluations, and then
Correct.
let the new superintendent that comes in make their own choices on stuff.
That's
So
with
he
the
would
assumption
do the
that you have
evaluation.
an operational superintendent.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea for us to plan on, because we talked about our timeline is negotiable for, when they would be here. We may not have someone until beginning of
Correct.
July, beginning of August. We talked about other school districts not ending until June, or even if they're in the state of Florida, the fiscal year doesn't end until the end of June. We don't need to leave people hanging. We've talked about again and again and again, instability. There needs to be, and people need to know for sure, I'm here, I'm coming
So
back. And allow, and go ahead and get this done, because we may not have, if Dr. Schiller's contract is up May 31st, at the most we might, and if he's gone and it's not extended, then we might have an acting, but that's a lot of pressure to put on an acting. I think we just need to move the process
So,
the way we
Dr.
normally
Schiller
do
did.
at that May meeting, and just get it done. And that way the person coming in knows they've got a competent cabinet that's got, highly effective evaluations all the time. They're ready to go and ready to support him. And we have vacancies. We've got wiggle room. Every superintendent who's come in here has made changes and adjusted people either immediately in case, like when I first got on the board, Dr. Theddy moved from HR and then to COO and then student services to COO and then HR because that's what the superintendent wanted to move around. They understand there's going to potentially be some movement, and like I said, we've already talked about today, we have some interim positions that need to be filled anyway. So I think we just need to move it along so that whoever comes in knows they've got a team ready to go on the ground. We're not questioning who's going to be here, who's not going to be here, but we need to go ahead and move forward with it.
Okay, I guess you got your direction.
I agree.
Just to clarify, I believe I heard, and I'm trying to take copious notes here so we know and we have a record, and I'm sure that's being done in the minutes, but our process will go forward according to the protocols and the timelines, and that I, as your interim superintendent until May 31, will have for you the completed, or I will have completed, not for you, but I will have completed and on file, the evals for those who report to the interim superintendent of the cabinet, and that'll be completed as customarily done, filed, and so forth. And that I am not to do the reappointments, but to do recommendations.
No, that was what one board member said.
Right.
We have
I need
consensus
clarity
on
on
yet,
that.
because my opinion is we go ahead and do the reappointments according to the timeline that we usually do. We need to have the reappointments done because we may not have a new superintendent in a good time frame, and the one coming in, needs to have a team assembled and ready to go. Even if that, we have some interims, and I hope y'all will stick around for a little bit longer, maybe than May 31st, just in case. But I think we need to go ahead and move forward with a reappointment process as we usually do.
What about if the incoming superintendent, we assign him on May 9th, he wants the opportunity to call them back, he would be able to, right?
To what?
Say there's an issue.
Yeah, I saw about him coming in,
Because
but what
I'm
we're saying.
seeing like this is, I still think that the incoming superintendent should have the option for whatever he wants, right? As long as when he gets here, he's able to make a decision, or she make a decision based on what they would like, right? So if you're in the process of reappointing and not reappointing and all that stuff, they can still come back if they like somebody and say, oh, I would like to retain this person. Does that make sense to you? Okay, maybe I'm just off my
Are you
whack.
saying,
I'll just
are
be
you
quiet.
saying that
I'll
if
just be
he,
quiet.
are you saying that if he recommends, somebody to not be reappointed, that the person that we bring in could say, oh, no, I really do want them? Okay, well, I mean, we move people around all the time,
Right.
even in the middle, so I think, there's that flexibility. Like I said, we have positions, it's understood. I think our cabinet's intelligent, understands that some moving around may happen just as it has happened in the last 4 years. But like I said, for stability's sake, we need to have the appointment process and not leave people hanging, wondering, what's going to happen.
Right.
Okay.
That's what we're
Got
trying to
it?
get at,
Yeah.
is that in fairness to all staff, that they know that the process is going forward, and there's a date by which that's been established where, and this is where I need clarity, where the reappointment recommendations to the board would be going forward.
Yes.
And those are recommendations. What the board does with that on May 9th is up to the board, depending upon if you've made an appointment and the operational date of the person beginning. Because if it's left open, again, you have until, and help me here, Dr. Green, you have until June 30th by state statute, but that is not necessarily the protocol that's been followed here because of the process. So maybe you can mull this over a little bit more to,
No,
No, I think you got,
direction.
we all are saying,
You got direction.
I haven't
Okay.
heard from Jennifer, but the four of us are saying,
very good.
yeah.
It's clear as mud. Thank you.
Okay. With that, with no other discussion, we'll be back at 5:30.